I'm going to call to order our goal-setting session for Monday, November 14th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. I'm going to ask everybody to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. As many of you know, this is an annual activity for us, goal setting. Council members and administration make recommendations for new programs or for issues that need to be addressed. And several of these items might make it into the budget. This is done before the budget formation process actually starts. And over the years, we've had some significant changes that came about as a result of our goal setting. And here we are at it again tonight. We have had several ideas submitted by our alder people, and we're going to go in order. If you look at the memo, the first item is charges for retail thefts. Alderman Gustafson. The Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development, that's Mr. Vanna and Mayor Marquez. Zoning Code Review, Permitted Uses, that's Alderwoman Sullivan. And a Long-Term Vision Statement, that's Alderman Klistak. And then we're going to review our surveys that we put out on our communication vehicles, and we're also going to put out or discuss our surveys that you filled out. And we also did surveys on people's general impression of the city. So I wanted to preface everything with those remarks. What we'll do now at this point is I'm going to turn it over to Alderman Gustafson. He's had some concerns regarding retail thefts. Following Eric's presentation, Chief Thomas has answers to some of the questions that I think Alderman Gustafson has posed. So, Eric?
Yeah, really, the intent of this topic is to identify various steps that could be taken to minimize the number of retail theft calls that the police officers have to respond to. Now, and the police chief has put together a great presentation that's going to go through some of the critical information. So I think it's probably the best place is to start, Chief, with your presentation.
Sure.
Go through that. And there'll be some points along the way I may stop you just to make a couple comments on.
No problem.
You guys, I'm sorry, I think the same will be for everybody. Would you rather have questions as you're going at the end, or does it matter to you?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, so feel
No.
free.
So I appreciate the thought. A few aldermen in the past have also given me suggestions. And I think Alderman Gustafson saw some issues within press releases, seeing a number of times that people have been arrested for retail theft, in particular retail theft at Walmart. So I think it's important to look at the data and let the data develop what we need to do. Research may lead to discovery that whether there is a problem, and if the problem exists, some type of worthy resolution. I've had a number of discussions either through email or otherwise with Alderman Gustafson, so I'm pleased to talk to him. I specifically asked Alderman Gustafson what was the goal and what we were trying to accomplish. His answer was, my overall goal is to minimize the number of retail theft calls. There are various ways of accomplishing this, short of a city ordinance. My interpretation of the overall goal may be different than others regarding the minimization of retail theft calls. For me, I think it's a matter of root causes and trying to figure out why we have retail theft and fixing that problem versus reducing the number of calls. I think if we reduce and correct the issue with retail theft, it will by process eliminate the number of retail theft calls that we respond to. So again, I appreciate that process. One of the things I talked about was sometimes department structure and because of the conversation about minimizing the number of retail theft calls in order for police to be proactive in other areas of policing. The survey that we'll talk about later also has issues about staffing levels. I think it's important to taxpayers and others to understand the structure and what happens. So there's one chief, one deputy chief, one secretary manager. There's 5 sergeants. There used to be 6. We reduced by 1. We used to have 2 sergeants per shift. We now have 1 sergeant per shift. We used to have a span of control 1 to 3. We now have a span of control 1 to 6, much more in line with modern policing. We used to have 2 deputy chiefs, as I said. We went down to 1. We increased the duties of the secretary manager. There's no reason for a badge to do accounts payable, accounts receivable, budgets, fleet maintenance, technology, all those different types of things doesn't require a badge. So we reduced that position as well. Because we reduced 1 deputy chief, 1 sergeant, we added 2 officers to the street, which was about $200,000 a year annual savings, so that was a good thing. We went to permanent shifts, as you well know. You supported that process and us getting there. A number of non-functional systems were removed, saving a number of dollars. There's quite a few building improvements, technology improvements, equipment improvements. Looked at equitable sharing fund and made that more usable. State forfeiture fund was in disarray. I went back 10 years and found some money that could be used, and we did use it. DUI fund also was almost non-existent, and in doing the research, found about $200,000. Electronic citation fund found about $18,000. That money was all used to put the radar detectors and cameras and all those different types of things into the squad cars to last purchase. So anyway, trying our best to have the manpower that's necessary, being efficient, being effective, and your support on all those things has been appreciated. There's a number of different ways that police have been taught about staffing. IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, have a model. Police Executive Research Forum has a model. Van Meter and Associates have a model. There's a lot of models out there. Typically, we use the IACP model with some modifications. It's basically taking the number of work hours by patrol officers, less all their time off, and making sure that we have enough personnel to cover all the calls, citizen-generated calls for service, times 2 to 3, so that we have plenty of time for preventative patrol. In your packet, slide 4, I think it is, there's a graphic that you've seen before. It's the manning and call load graphic. And the ones that you saw before are pretty similar to this one. It's just this one is this year's. And so the trend has been the same regarding making sure that our manpower matches our call load, and we are where we're supposed to be when. The next slide is total crime. Quite a few of the items that were mentioned in the goal setting, as well as some of the comments at the city council meeting, has been crime is up, and those type of things. As you can see in the trend line, and the overall crime has significantly decreased over time. With the comment that may have been taken out of context about crime going up was when I presented about 2-3 city council meetings ago, and I was talking about moving from how we report crime through uniform crime reports, UCR. It's about a 1930-ish process. We've been doing it for a long time. And now the federal government has decided to go to NIBRS, National Incident-Based Reporting System. The two don't count crime the same, so because there's more crime counted and more crime types that are counted in NIBRS than UCR, it gives that appearance, but it's not accurate because you're not comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So when the time comes, I will do my best to do that for the community and for yourselves. Next slide just continues that thinking of safety. This in particular to safety to the driving public. We measure that by traffic crashes, and traffic crashes too have been reduced. You've seen both those slides before. You saw them in the annual report that was put out. Those were just steals from the 2021 annual report. The slide on annual reporting regarding NIBRs, I'm not sure if it made that into your packet or not. I did present it, like I said, a few council meetings ago, and there is a change, but when you're looking at and converting 2021 data from UCR to NIBRs, and then looking at 2021 NIBRs data to 2022 NIBRs data, there's actually a decrease in crime once again. There was comments about the frequency and unavailability of police for priority calls. There's never been a time where we have not responded and quickly to a retail theft. I know that that's one of the survey questions, is that police emergency response. I'm not sure how that's measured, but I appreciate the A's in that column. I did do the research, and we do get to emergency calls very quickly, and we get to all calls within 6 minutes. Well, on average, all calls between 6 minutes. There's obviously some that go beyond that. Just so you understand, there's use of ILEAS, mutual aid, and merit. So when you have a situation, I'll use Aurora again, I think I used it before. When they had the shooting at the factory, they called an ILEAS 30, and there's 5 officers for every ILEAS count. So they were asking for 150 additional officers. And we did send officers to that scene. Mutual aid, we see that every day. We're going across the border to help one of our bordering towns, and in turn, they too are coming to Darien to assist us, so that we always have the best amount of people at a scene in order to make it work. Merit does a lot of different things. Merit has the crash unit. Well, so if there's a fatal, near fatal, or suspicious crash, they'll come out and do that process. They have a drone team. They have major crimes team. They have SWAT team, canine teams, all those different types of things, so that within the county of DuPage, we have very sufficient amount of people to help out on those type of situations and calls. Recently, we had the issue at WeatherTech. Those were Darien police officers' handcuffs that was put on that suspect. So again, we go where we're needed and help out. We sent our K9 to Aurora a few months back and assisted with the apprehension of a murder suspect. So we help out where we're needed, and we get the needed help when we are expecting it. The next slide is a very ugly slide. What I was trying to accomplish, and I don't think I did, was to demonstrate the impact of retail theft calls, the overall time that an officer has to patrol. So across the top, there's 365 tiny little boxes, and along the y-axis, I have to figure that in my head, the y-axis represents the patrol hours in a day. I left out one day shift officer and one afternoon shift officer, just in case they were on leave of some type. I left off the sergeants, and I left off the power shift car. So you can see that there's next to no time, there is no time, where a retail theft caused any type of issue with patrol. So that's a good thing. Doesn't mean that we give up on the idea, because the idea of being efficient is important. One of the items that Alderman Gustafson asked about was change over time, and he asked for 3 years worth of data, and you can see that November and December of last year, 2021, were the only 2 months based on East Lampeter's ordinance that it would have kicked in. So, because you get 10 by their description, and then over 10, then there's a charge that's associated to it. So only 2 of those months it would have applied. This November, we're only halfway through the month, probably a little less than halfway. We've had 3 so far this month, so doubling that, we're probably at 6, which is a significant reduction from prior years. One of the things I didn't do until tonight was look at data back to 2009. The high year was 2014, where we had 130 retail thefts, and the low year was 2010, when we had 36. So it does fluctuate quite a bit. So if you take any one time frame or 1 year compared to another year, you could either show a significant increase or a significant decrease.
Is there any idea of why they would fluctuate that much?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
And it's just very confusing when you see the
Yes.
numbers.
You know, you would love to have the idea of what we did in 2010, where we only had 39, and apply that to 2014, but
Yeah.
I don't have that answer for you,
Okay.
sir. We do have the frequency of calls for service and police called, or we were not called. So contacted Walmart, and it's about a 1-to-1, where they handle it inside half the time and call the police half the time. And then what's the decision-making about process about when they call the police or when they don't call the police? So it depends on the ability to identify the offender. So if the offender is identified and it's a small dollar amount, under 75, under $100, they handle it internally. If they
Now,
can't,
when you say you handle it internally, are the people still charged?
no,
So it only when the police are called is there an actual formal charge? Is that
that's
correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. And when the police are called to that scene, we've been called, I think, different things run in different order. I did put the date on this in. So 9 months from January 1 to September 30, we responded 82 times to retail thefts. I don't think I put the number that we were at Walmart, but the lion's share is at Walmart. The next slide talks about once we are called, what happens. So 61% of the time we clear by arrest. When I talk about clear by arrest, I'm using the Uniform Crime Report's definition of an arrest. So it is a custodial arrest or any alternative to arrest. And most of the time we cite at the scene and release at the scene. So it's just about like receiving a traffic ticket. And then we do a report on the situation. And then about 39% of the time we respond. It's a small dollar amount. We're able to identify the offender once we arrive on the scene. And then again, Walmart or retail mercantile establishments opt not to prosecute. So there's a lot going on. Also, our response, we talk about trespass. And so Walmart will tell the individual they are not allowed back on the property or any Walmart properties. And we do what's called a trespass warning. It only takes about 15 minutes. It's done on a field contact card. And we'll fill that out so that person's been warned away from the property. By Illinois statute, in order to charge criminal trespass, you have to have a prior warning. So that constitutes their prior warning.
Quick question: when your team is called, are the people always charged, or is there sometimes it's dropped after police officers show up?
About 39% of the time it's dropped when we would get there.
When you get there, okay.
Again,
Okay.
all based on the dollar amount and whether we're able to identify the offender. Sometimes we have to bring the offender into the PD. do fingerprints or some other thing to make identification.
Okay.
Yep. One of the things talked about was underrings and mistakes and those type of things. I looked at just the last 12 retail thefts because I can't do that through a database. I have to go through the individual record at this time to find that information out. So I limited how much I was going to do the research on that. Over the last 12 times, it was an average of 20 items that were stolen. If you add up the dollar amount, divide by 12, on average it was $299 worth of items that were stolen. All kinds of different items, dog collars, candy, pillows, food items were listed 4 times out of the 12. Clothing, toys, and cosmetics were all stolen. So different items at different times. There was a lot of different ways people would do that. So a lot of times they would have 2 items, one on top of the other. They would scan the bottom item and then bag both items. That was pretty popular. Happened about half of the time. Large items, pillows and some the big water, 24 case water or 48 case something else. I forget that what was in that 48 case item. They just didn't scan it. They just didn't take it out of their grocery cart or do anything to even try to do those. In one, the large one, the offender placed a lot of items into his pants and into his coat and left the store. Of those 12 arrests that we made in September and early October, the offender was cited 7 times, which mean that like that traffic ticket I was explaining, and arrested 5 times. And one of those 5 times, the person was given an I bond. And the reason that happened was because those 5 times, those were felony amounts. They weren't Class A misdemeanors. The lowest amount was $40. The highest amount that was taken was $1,183. The 2 that were cited under $75 was because the person didn't have any ID, and we can't identify that person, so we took them into custody and allowed for fingerprinting so we can make proper identification. During council meetings, there were 2 locations mentioned as making changes to the way they handle retail thefts: East Lampeter, Pennsylvania, and Atlanta, Georgia. So let's take East Lampeter Township. I'm not sure what's going on there. We'll talk about it here now. In their prior year, prior to them enacting this retail theft ordinance, they had 628 calls for service, making arrests of almost 400 people. I don't know what's going on there because East Lampeter is smaller than Darien, and they have more police officers than Darien. So they made this ordinance, a excessive retail theft ordinance. It was enacted in October of 2015. In the subsequent year, they had some very good successes. It got cut by about half. They had 296 calls for service and about 200 arrests.
Yeah, and I had reached out to them because doing the research, I found out they did have an ordinance that they passed, and I talked with the administrator there at the town who gave me some of this information and stuff, and she indicated, yeah, they did have a major issue going on there, that their officers were spending, every officer, every shift, were spending 2 to 4 times per shift going to the Walmart, is how bad it got. So they got very desperate, okay, and needed to come up with some way to reduce it. They tried working with the Walmart, trying to get them put their own security and staff and things in. Walmart didn't want to do that. So they were really backed into a corner, and they had to find something to do. So this is when they came up with charging $250 per call once they exceeded 10 of them per month. And then it was also $250 per call if it exceeded 2, where the police officers went and they did not formally charge. So they really tried to, push back and take it. And it looked like for them, this specific type of ordinance did work, but they had a very, as you can see, the numbers, in a very desperate situation.
It was pretty hefty amount. I guess in your definition of whether it was successful or not. Obviously, if you're just counting the amount of time that officers went there and dealt with the situation, it was significantly reduced. That one might be my definition of success. My definition of success would be that there was it went from 394 to like 115 arrests. That there was 70%, I think that is ish.
Yeah.
There had been a 70% reduction in crime, not 75% reduction in responding to police calls. We don't know whether they dealt with the crime. In the email that was forwarded me from, I think her name was Tara.
Yeah, correct, Tara. Yeah.
From Alderman Gustafson, did not discuss any of those situations where they actually dealt with the crime itself versus dealing with police response.
These stats are in 2014, 2015. Do we have any stats for this period of 21, 22?
Yep. Next slide is current year 10/5/21.
I missed that slide. I apologize.
I might have missed putting it in there. I'm not sure.
No, it's there.
Okay. So this year, the current year, ending 10/5/22, and that's they use that odd date just because that's when they enacted the ordinance in 2015.
2015. Yeah.
So this year completed was 115 arrests, and so I took a look at their population, our population. So their population in 2020, 17,834. Ours was 21,843. So we were bigger than they are. Officers, they have 39, and 3 non-sworn personnel. We have 34 and 5 non-sworn personnel. Their officers per 1,000 equals 2.19. Our officers per 1,000 equals 1.56. That's not unheard of. If you looked at a map, east to west, you'll see a higher number of officers per 1,000 on the East Coast, and as you work west, you'll see less officers per 1,000. That's why it's the worst mechanism if anybody comes in and tries to tell you or sell you on increasing personnel based on officers per 1,000, kick them out the door. Go back to the very first slide second slide, where we're talking about a proper policing staffing model. Retail thefts per 100, per 1,000 is 35 for East Lampeter, and for Darien it's 2. Officers per capita, they are 40% higher than what we are. Their theft per capita is 1,379% more than what we had. So it's significantly different demographics and different those type of things. So next, let's look at Atlanta, because that was also one of the places that was brought up. So I looked into that. In Atlanta, they did stop responding to retail thefts, but only in one district out of all of the ones that they have. I said in here 1 out of 24. That's purely a guess based on the geographic size of Atlanta and the number of officers. That was just my best guess. We do have, we're talking about one district out of 3, significantly different. They are having a serious problem within that district, responding to much more serious crime. On the news release and those type of things, they specifically talked about concentrating on carjackings. I would be interested in how many carjackings have been reduced since they stopped responding to retail thefts. I think that would have to be the measure of whether they are having success or not. They're down 300 officers, and we've talked about that a number of times here, about being able to retain, recruit, and hire personnel. We are when I did this PowerPoint, we were fully staffed. we had one officer that opted to leave, and so we're busy trying to fill that spot, and we'll get that done. We'll be back to full staff shortly. Because they're mandated to report, they will still take the police report. They just do it at the police department. I think that's, again, I've been police chief in Aurora, which is the second largest city in Illinois. But it's nowhere near the size of an Atlanta or Chicago, so I'm not going to just try to say I know everything about policing in those large metropolitan areas. It just seems very inefficient, especially for us to put a person, take them off the street, and then put them in a building doing nearly nothing until somebody comes in and needs a police report done. It seems very inefficient. If they do have 24 patrol districts and they have 3 shifts, you're talking 75 officers that could be back out on patrol if that's the case. I don't know what their case is, what their situation is. They talk about in the press release or the interview with the chief, she mentioned that it takes about 90 minutes to make an arrest of a person that shoplifted a shirt and a pair of socks. So I don't know if that was an actual situation or if she was just referring to something hypothetical. I have 2 issues with that. One, why are you arresting anybody for stealing a shirt and a pair of socks unless it's a very expensive shirt and very expensive socks? I think there's a lot better alternatives to doing that. And then it also seems very inefficient to take 90 minutes to make an arrest. But again, I don't know what their procedures are. If they're having to take an arrest in this district and drive that person to central booking or something like that, if they have to take the items that were stolen as a part of the process, you could get to 90 minutes having to inventory and put all those things into evidence. Booking a person, again, I don't know what their procedures are. So if the arresting officer has to do the booking things, all those different types of things. So it certainly sounds like some inefficient procedures there. And then her answer was for the establishment to hire their own personnel. Retail theft is a big problem. It's a $60 billion a year enterprise. Our Attorney General, Kwame Rule, sees it as a problem. He initiated a task force on retail thefts. I went to his presentation probably about 2 months ago or so. Very good, and hopefully between that and a number of other things, we'll be able to reduce retail theft. I know in Aurora we ran a number of operations shortly, either around or after the Friday after Thanksgiving, and in order to try to reduce that amount of retail thefts. Interesting thing I took a look at was the hometown of the arrestee. Out of those 81, I think it was, that I looked at, only 3 people were Darien residents. All the others were from out of town. Woodridge had 8, Chicago 5, Willowbrook 3, Naperville 3, Romeoville 3. And then went on Walmart's website because it's find stores near me or whatever, and they just put in those addresses, or not the address, the city, and then looked at closer retail stores, and there was a lot of them. So obviously traveling here, and hopefully with the knowledge that you're going to be arrested and prosecuted, we'll keep them out of our town and keep our town a little bit safer. Heard a number of times in the city council meetings about police response and not patrolling due to maybe being at retail thefts and those type of things. Talked about cameras and being able to demonstrate the police weren't there. So all the cars have GPS. So I went on and contacted county. It was actually a little bit of an ugly process because the player that they use is kind of crude, but I wanted to prove a point. And so I took one random date and one random car that usually patrols District 3, because that's the district in question. And GPS showed that that car, that officer, was on that street at 7 a.m., 11:58 a.m., and 2:27 p.m. So I would hate to go back and waste my time doing proving my point that just because you don't see a police officer in the neighborhood doesn't mean that he's not there or they're not there. A lot of times we patrol in unmarked cars, and so you may not recognize patrol. Certainly do a lot of patrolling in those in the neighborhoods.
And Chief, I think someone in your staff had actually spoken to Walmart to get some ideas from them of how they're managing it.
We did. Sergeant Lork went there, had a conversation. Some of the same ideas that you had were discussed, and we're working with management, hopefully in process to work out some of those things.
Okay.
But when you have
Good.
that type of retail theft and underrings and those type of things, the way they're doing them. In one situation, I can't remember what box that they used, but they took the item out of the box, then stuffed a bunch of clothes in the box, and they rang up the box, but they didn't ring up all the items in the box. So there's a lot of different ways that retail thefts are occurring, and it is definitely an issue.
Yeah, and
So-
I think most of it is due to underscanning, correct? Is that where the
Probably about half
half?
are underscanning.
Yeah, because that's really what Walmart is doing. I know in the state of Arkansas, they're doing a test now of moving totally to self-scanning machines. And I know in Canada they've done that. I was actually at the Dryden, Ontario store when they already had taken out all the full service and had just switched all over to self-checkout. And there were 25 self-checkout cubes set up, and it was they only had one person monitoring all 25. And you had people screaming at each other. You couldn't hear the beeping. I was there with my future son-in-law, and he was scanning the items, and then I was checking the screen to make sure that it scanned. And he missed one, and I told him, well, you missed that one. He goes, no, I heard the beep. Well, the beep wasn't from the machine next to you. So it's very easy, and that's always the challenge I've had. How does Walmart tell if someone purposely underscanned or was just by accident? Because it's extremely easy to do.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, they will take two items,
Yep,
they'll put them over top of each
Right.
other,
yep.
then they will scan the item. It only scans the bottom, but they package both.
Yep.
20 items per customer, they're not doing, having a mistake.
Chief, I have a question. You presented data for East Lampeter, which showed a reduction in the number of retail thefts, the number of arrests. How do we know that has anything to do with the fine of $250? We really don't.
No.
And how do we know what Walmart is reporting to them or what is being reported to the police? I mean, if you're going to threaten a business in your town, you're going to be fined $250 every time you go above 10 visits a month. That store may not call the police at all.
Yeah, it's, I don't know any kind of, I just don't know. I don't believe there was any kind of study that was done, any kind of independent variable, dependent variable, all those scientific things that they can point to that cause that reduction. We do know there was a reduction, obviously, because they're demonstrating that. The one thing that was done was to pass that city ordinance, but it's much more correlation than causation, and we don't know those things.
I doubt that they put a sign on the door that said any retail thefts above 10 will get fined, and potential thieves sat back and said, I won't do that this month. I won't rob this store because they're going to get charged. I know I'm being sarcastic here, but I just don't see the correlation. I don't believe there is a correlation. In my mind,
they're still going over. So they're still Walmart is still getting charged right now because they still got 262. So they're over the 120.
But we
that they
don't know
get.
the impact that that 250 had on them.
No,
We
no.
don't.
But when I talk with East Lampeter, they felt very comfortable, and we can have a detailed conversation with her, that it did, definitely saw an impact. Now, yeah, they don't know specifically, their officers are still being called over there. So it wasn't like there's anything you could point to and definitely put your finger around, but it happened that it did get reduced. Now, is it directly from that? I'm not sure what else. But the thing is, it may have forced Walmart to take other procedures to be able to closely monitor. You can put more people to monitor the self-scannings. So you can put more people on the floor by the machines. I was over at Walmart this past Sunday at 10:30 in the morning. I spent an hour over there watching. They only had one full checkout lane going. The rest were all full self-checkout. And each one, the two areas that they have, there was only one person monitoring both areas. So one person at each area. So, I mean, there is, I think, more that Walmart could do, too, to help reduce it. But what East Lampere indicated, once they put that procedure in place, potentially Walmart took additional steps, but they wouldn't take them until they started getting fined.
Right.
Yeah, question either Eric or Chief. Walmart, Eric, you saw a couple of the employees there, but obviously a store like Walmart, if two employees at the lines are not all the security they have.
No,
whether
there's
it's
cameras. And
so-
that's when your machine gets locked up. And this happens a lot. I've been through it, and a machine will lock up. Normally, it's because someone saw something on the screen that looked like you didn't scan something. They lock your machine. If you ever had that happen, when the person comes over, the first thing they do is check to make sure you scanned every item.
Right.
That's their way of their controlling it. Now, the other step that they don't do, which Costco and Sam's does, is they verify when you leave the store. They do a little evaluation to make sure you did scan everything.
No, I know, my only question.
And that's not
yeah,
being done at Walmart either.
yeah, my
They
only
do that on
question was-
occasion, though.
Rarely, not anymore.
Especially if you have like a more expensive item and they see you have a more expensive, like I bought a cooler there and they immediately stopped me on exit. I had to show my receipt. They checked inside the cooler. So they did take some precautions, but they're not checking
they're-
every
I've
and
never been
counting
checked there,
parcels.
and I've walked out with a cart full of stuff.
But that's
I've
what
been
I'm,
checked a couple
that's what I'm
times.
trying to understand, Eric, though. You're pointing to the two people maybe watching it. But that's, I don't know if that's a point of security or the service you're getting there.
That's not a point of security. That's a person there to help you with the scan. Also, locking machine is not a part of the security. Locking machine has to do with something else. They can't lock the machine because you need in order to complete the retail theft, you need to pass the final location of payment. And so stopping you mid-stride is not going to fulfill the elements of retail theft. So
Now,
most likely
I did
that
talk
is a
with-
issue.
I talked with the manager at Dryden, Ontario, and that manager told me when they locked up, because the person locked up next to me, I asked him, okay, why did that lock up? And he just winks at me, he pointed up. Okay, so they're watching in the camera.
Very well, me, I have no idea what retail theft and what the elements are in Dryden, Ontario. I do know what they are in the
Very
state of
heavy.
Illinois. And it is, that would not pass for all the elements of retail theft.
Can I ask a question too? Because there's other establishments in Darien that have self-checkout besides Walmart. I know Home Depot does, Jewel does. I don't think Walgreens does. And do we have are those numbers
They're not never close to the others, but there are retail thefts at those locations that you mentioned.
Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. I've worked my whole background in the private industry, so I haven't been in government or this or that. But what I'm getting at is, if there's no financial incentive, they're not going to support our police. You know, they go in there, they're supporting and helping now, but once you start squeezing the dollar, right? If they can find a business case where it's cheaper to have additional calls come out versus having additional security or a few extra people by the door, they're going to do it. It's a business case. So even, for worst case is 16 calls to Walmart, if we made 20, I'd be fine if we say the max was 20. So at least there's like a ceiling. There's a little bit of a bite to what Chief Thomas says. If not, then they could just ignore him once, the manager from Arkansas comes in and is like, we need higher profits. So just get rid of it, push it onto the city. So you got to have some type of ceiling, right? If you don't have no consequence for speeding, you're just going to keep on speeding, right? At the end of the day, if there's no consequence for what you do, you're just going to keep on doing it. So I'd be fine if you made that bar 20 or 25 or really high. But so at least there's something, those managers at Walmart say, hey, if we get a little too high or we cut back too much, there's a potential consequence for it. And the second thing no one talks about, we have the economic development and the chamber here trying to grow business in Darien. And if you see these reports of theft all the time in the police and the media, it's sort of like, you get this perception that, wow, they're always having crime at Walmart. Do we want to open our business here, right? I think that's something no one really talked about too much, too, is that perception, that image. And that's something I think is really more important than even all these visits, is those images you're putting out there. We're trying to bring in new business, bring in young people, and you just have this, police at Walmart all the time. It sort of gives an image over time. So if we can do anything to reduce it, I think that's important as well. And thank you, Chief Thomas, for the GPS study on it. I can show that out to residents as well. Greatly appreciated.
Question for Tom. I didn't understand, so you could maybe clarify. You said there's no consequence.
Correct.
I don't know what that means, because people can get arrested. People can go to
Consequence
jail.
at Walmart, right?
loses.
If you have
Walmart
5
has-
people working as security at Walmart, right? Okay. And we got to say, you know what? We're having a hard quarter. Let's cut these 5 people off and put that extra additional load onto the police, right? So maybe $100 to $200, we're going to have the Darien Police Department address it, right? So when I'm saying consequence, I make the balance of, where those costs go. So after 20 calls, right, to get 22 calls, they're going to get billed $250. Then we can say, okay, you know what? We'll add in potential extra security at Walmart to help address it.
Yeah, you could say I'm just not following, because I would think any store, any business I talk to, they're the ones that have the vested interest in reducing that. So, but anyway,
Yeah, you go to the Target, for example. They have full security sitting there out in front, right? Why doesn't Walmart do that?
You don't know what Walmart's
Because it's
doing,
cheaper.
is my point. You don't know I don't know, Chief. We don't know what Walmart's doing. But I think Eric pointed to the ceiling. They're doing a lot. That's all. So your point about there's no consequence, I just wanted to understand, because I wasn't sure what you meant. But you
So if they
explained
wanted
what
to
you
cut
meant.
back on cameras, right, they could, if they wanted to, right? But because they're we're pushing back from the police chief going over there, visiting and spotlight on them, they're investing more on their security. So
I don't know that that's a fact. When this all came up and I was looking, you would find articles about Walmart almost every year, and again, more recent, investing millions into security. I don't think they're investing more security because one of our sergeants went there. They might have ideas to put things up, but not to the magnitude I think you're thinking or saying it is. But again, that's your opinion, but I don't know that that's a fact, what you just said, and I'd like to try to deal with, like Chief is a lot of statistics and facts here, so I just want to stay on
okay.
track.
So the image that we see in the newspaper all the time, is that good or bad for the city? That someone's
Well,
always stealing from Walmart.
Again, Tom, you're saying all the time. What is all the time? I think
Weekly
if you look-
basis.
If you look at our police report, many people are astounded at really the minimal amount of crime, and I think we all sell ourselves on Darien as one of the safest towns around of anywhere we know. So I don't think you might think it. I don't think somebody looking at something at Walmart is going to give the impression that Darien is not a safe town and businesses are not going to come. But we don't need to debate that, because you think a certain way. I just don't. I don't think that, because I believe Darien is a very, very safe community, and I believe, and you'll see in the surveys that we will talk about later, at least for the 400 people that responded, I think that's the feeling. Now, if you have residents that think differently, then you could tell the council, but I'm not sure that you're accurate.
Mary?
Yeah, I think it's all about perception, and I think chiefs run a lot of stats for us on overall crime, whether it's car crime or retail theft. But I honestly feel like no one I know and no one I spoke to was even talking about this as a problem until it was brought up as a problem. And I guess my question is, it doesn't appear to be a problem yet. I mean, I thank Alderman Gustafson for doing all this research and being preemptive, but I think we're spending a lot of time talking about a situation that's not really a problem yet. And if we're supposed to be pro-business and working in partnership with whether it's the big stores like Walmart and Home Depot and Jewel, or the little mom and pop shops. We need to be a welcoming community to not only businesses but residents. And I feel like until it's like a habitual problem, yeah, they might have a spike during the holidays. I don't feel like we would be portraying ourselves as being welcoming and pro-business. And they do pay taxes, and they do pay for the protection too, just like private citizens do. So I feel like they're entitled to have a partnership with our police department and with our city and with our fire department. I mean,
Yeah, and-
people pull false alarms all the time in buildings,
They get fined for that.
but that's after a certain many.
Eric?
And the thing is, you know, and the whole point of this is, yeah, you're right. As of right now, it may not be a major issue. Now, the question comes, what happens if it does become one? What do we do? It just, at least this puts it on the radar. You have now, the chief's team is talking with Walmart to see if there's anything additional that they can do on their end, which I think is great. But then it's like, what do we do now if it does become material? What do we do at that point? And it's going to be up to the chief to tell us when it becomes burdensome to his staff. Once it becomes burdensome to him, then as a community, we're going to have to do something. And I'm just trying to at least get this on the radar that here's some possibilities of what could be done if we have to do something, if it gets to that point. Because I truly believe down the road, you're going to see all the full checkout counters are all going to be gone at Walmart. It's going to be all self-checkout, which in itself is going to lead to potentially more. So it's just, all I want to do is let's put this in our back pocket to know that this might be something that we might have to deal with depending upon how the actual statistics go. But I just ask the chief to keep tracking it so we know what's going on there, how long it does take your folks, and what the nature of it is, and is there other things that Walmart can do. There's very little signage over there telling people that why not put a sign up saying underscanning is a criminal activity? Okay, there's no sign that tells you that. Okay, maybe people should know that, but maybe it needs to be in front of people. There's one monitor that's up on top that shows that there's cameras in use. Okay, that's really your only idea that you're being watched. Okay, is that monitor that's up. Maybe there needs to be some additional signage. Maybe during peak times, instead of one person there monitoring, maybe they need to have two people there monitoring. So I think there's some other things that Walmart could look at doing. I think I'm going to leave that up to the chief and his team to work with Walmart to identify those.
Eric, I don't know if you mentioned, I'm sorry, I missed it. They also, when you're checking out, you could see yourself individually. I don't know if when you just said you could see yourself on the screen, did you mean the big screen?
No, there's just a large screen that tells you that you're being monitored.
Okay.
And
Oh,
it's
I'm
got
sorry.
of the whole area.
Because I meant when you're actually checking out, you're at the
Now,
register,
when
that
you-
camera's showing your face, so you know you're getting,
That they have at Sam's.
okay.
That shows your face when you're checking out at Sam's. I was there last week. And then
It has that too.
And then Sam's also check. Now Sam's is nice because they have an app. When you put your item into your cart, you scan it on your phone app, put it into your cart.
Yeah.
Okay, when you finish up, you go ahead and pay on your app, and you don't have to go through the lines at all. You go directly out, and then when you go out, they go on your phone, they scan the app, and they verify a few items in your cart to make sure you scanned everything. So they've got a very good process going at Sam's to do the verification.
They're part of Walmart.
I was gonna say,
I know.
They're one happy
Exactly.
family.
There's no financial incentive.
You know, if we learned anything through this study, and
Oh.
I think you're bringing it forward was a good idea. The chief presented a lot of information, and if anybody out there is watching this tonight, I think what they learned is Darien is a very safe community. That the
Yes.
retail thefts in
Yep.
Darien are low, that we have a police force that is responsive. And, you know, this, just like everything else we've seen with Chief Thomas's reports, is that our rate of crime in Darien is extremely low throughout in terms of DuPage County. We've also learned tonight that our police go up and down all the streets in Darien. You know, a resident may think they never see the police, but they're there. And as the chief provided an example, on one street where people didn't think they saw the police, that police car went down that street 3 times in that one day. So I think we've learned a lot. I think this is a good thing. I know we spent a lot of time on it tonight, but I think it was worth going through it. I want to thank Alderman Gustafson for bringing it up. I think it was appropriate. He did a lot of research on this. Wasn't just something he gave an idea to, and all the work fell on the chief's part. So Eric, thank you for that.
Yeah, in the January to October arrest, only 3 people were from Darien. So we just happened to have a Walmart, located in Darien.
And the other thing you learned from that is not all of them are, the other ones are from the city of Chicago.
That's correct.
You know, a lot of people say Chicago's crime is coming out here.
Right.
Didn't appear to be that way.
No.
So,
No.
any
Well,
other
thank you for
questions
listening to me
on this issue?
Quickly.
Tom?
So the memo discusses increasing penalties and fines as an option to deter theft. Do we have any, and again, I don't think we have a problem at this moment based on everything that happened today. However, I don't think it would hurt for us to look at other municipalities in the area to see what their penalties and fines are for retail theft, see if we're consistent. I don't know when the last time it changed.
Most of them are
it's $100 to $500, is that what it is?
That's correct. If it's local, and up to $1,000 if it's state charge. And obviously you have, if it's local, there's not jail possibility. If it's charged state, then you have, depending on whether it's a felony amount or misdemeanor amount, you could have jail or prison time as a sentence. I did look, and I'm not sure why I omitted it, but I did. That was another thing that Alderman Gustafson asked me to look at was the average, and the average is $100 fine.
So we're consistent with everyone else.
Correct.
Chief, for Tom's question, if it's not our own court and it goes to county, the judge assesses the fine, right? Just so everybody's clear, so.
Judge assesses whether it's our local or
You're correct,
not.
yeah, our local, yes,
The
right.
difference is really who presents that case. So if it's local, oh shoot, her name just went out of my head, Christine
Christine.
our local prosecutor does it. And if it's a state charge, then one of the assistant state's attorneys will process it or prosecute it.
Any other questions on this topic? Okay. Does anybody want to take a bathroom break at this point, or because we have another topic that might be taking up some time? Mary, you brought some snacks and stuff?
I did not, because
You
we were
didn't.
going to be on the air.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
She usually brings snacks. That's why I didn't mean to embarrass her.
Call Jimmy John's if you
Brian brought his candy. I saw the candy bar. I said, you must have got that from Mary. But
Yeah.
all right, let's move on. The next item on our agenda is the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development. This has its origins with yours truly. Mr. Van and I have had extensive discussions on this issue. This proposal that you see in front of you is something that we have spent a considerable amount of time on. And I'm going to let Brian, this is his as much as it is mine. So I'll let you introduce it.
Well, the idea of getting some help is not new. I remember when the property near, along the clock tower, when that was built, the city council talked about, should we get help in leasing that? Should we get a broker? So we just let Dan loose, and Dan showed on that project, really some wonderful retail places. And then I know, Eric, you brought up something similar in the budget last year. It was a little bit tight on the budget time, but I think here, when Mayor and I took a look at this, we expanded. We did say, similar to what you said, how can we get more business in town?
Right.
And though, as important, how can we be a liaison to the current businesses?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants the new retail sales tax money, but we also want to make sure that we have good relationships
Yep.
and communications with the businesses.
Yep.
So when the mayor and I talked about this, we did a bit further and really tried to define a couple of things. One is, what would a position look like in terms of, I'll say, business recruiter as well as a, somebody who could pinpoint issues from the current business community that the city council might want to hear about, may want to work on, kind of a problem shooter, problem solver. And we came up with that job description. And then we built on that to some degree. We bounced both around. But, I've been here a long time, and I've seen the Chamber of Commerce struggle financially many years. It's many members are here, but it is really tough. They're raising money, they're selling memberships, they're having events to try to keep the organization strong. And I know there's been a lot of years of directors, sometimes it's hard to find them. They're all nervous the week before Darien Fest, because if it rains, that's a problem. And it's really, really hard, I believe, for that consistency. Now, it has worked out, but I know there were years it's much tougher than ever, especially COVID and things. So again, Mayor and I talked about, what can we do to reach out to all the businesses and take those responsibilities that the chamber has now, build on those, and make sure the current businesses are getting something for the business license fee they pay now. Because right now the chamber sells memberships both to businesses inside and outside of Darien. And our idea was, with your annual business license, you're a chamber member. And I think a couple of things that might help with just getting everybody in the chamber. And once we have everybody in the chamber, if that works out, we would have the director again, or the person responsible for that, or the coordinator, really reach out on what can we do to help businesses, whether it's monthly luncheons, educational programs, again, bringing items to the city like they might do now to specifically the chamber. One of the items we debated a bit was, now if this does move to a chamber under the auspices of the city, would outside businesses be allowed to be in that? And after we kick that around a lot, there is strong interest from members outside of the community that want to be part of the community and have been for many years. And we ended up, at least in our discussion, saying the benefits of that was worth it. And there would be at least some, what we thought of, some fee to offset what the current business owners pay as a business license. And most of the material that we're talking or presenting is in the packet. So job descriptions are in the packet. Financial impact is in the packet. Unless I missed anything, Mayor, it's probably a good time for the aldermen to get a chance, aldermen and women to weigh in.
I just wanted to add, we developed an economic development committee 3 years ago that we did not have. And when COVID hit, what was remarkable about that committee is we had a group of volunteers who all had full-time jobs. Well, most of them had businesses, who actually went out and visited businesses. And they actually walked in the store and met the owner. I did that. I went in, I met the owners. And they were surprised, those business owners were surprised to see representatives of the city walking in to see them, asking them how they were doing. They were shocked when they saw the mayor walk in and ask them how they were doing. And I think I've got a number of stories I could share with you with regard to that. So we saw the benefit of a volunteer group that went out and basically let the businesses know that we cared about them. Okay? Just think to yourself what it would be like if you had an individual who was an employee of the city who actually went out and developed those business ties. I'll give you, for instance, you guys know the restaurant Jam and Jelly. Jam and Jelly's over there in the Chestnut Court Shopping Center. Jam and Jelly sent in an email request for a business license. Okay? We sent them the paperwork. About a month to a month and a half went by, and we never got that business license application filled out. It was funny, Mr. Darien was over there in the restaurant, and he met the owner, and the owner said she wasn't even sure she still had the application. Correct, Nick? All right. What we did at that point is I took brought another individual with me, and I went to that store looking for the owner. The owner was not there. And what we found out is that The center has to decide whether or not someone can have alcohol at that location. She was requesting to be able to sell alcohol so that she could meet the same standards as as Honey and Jam. Honey and Jam did mimosas, they did Bloody Marys. She wanted to do the same thing. The individual who would go out from the city would be the individual who would do all that. They would contact the center. They would find out if the center allowed alcohol in that center. They would find out, they would get the business application filled out with the owner, and that they would be able to communicate with the city. They would be the liaison. I mean, that's just one example among many possibilities that are out there. When you think about growth, you don't think about bringing in businesses. We're very happy with the businesses that are coming into Darien, but let's have what if we have an individual who, in his or her discussions with businesses in the community, find out that they think that a certain business would be attractive to a different demographic group in the city of Darien. And so that individual comes back to the city, or that person works with a business to get that business to come into Darien. So we're not just looking at filling spaces, we're looking at bringing in certain businesses that are attractive to all our demographic groups within the city. So we saw the benefit of that. Plus, we also saw the benefit of having a chamber where there wasn't the struggle for money. Now, we've got a group, a board of directors now of the chamber that has done really well this last year. They had a very successful Darien Fest. They've got money in the bank, and they do well. They worked hard. A couple years ago, that wasn't the story. We want to have a Chamber of Commerce where we have events, breakfasts, lunches, activities that are really geared to particular groups. So let's say, for instance, the person who runs the chamber for the city decides we could have a special seminar for all the restaurant owners in the city of Darien. So you tailor that presentation just for the restaurant owners, or you tailor your presentation for your retail people. That's why we saw the advantage of doing this, of bringing the chamber in to the city under the auspices of the city. And again, as Brian said, we spent a lot of time on it. Brian and I had one meeting with chamber personnel. I've had a couple. I had a luncheon with the chamber people, and I've had another meeting with the chamber people who are sitting out here. This is your board of directors, for the most part, sitting out here. And we've talked about this, and I think they're excited about it. I don't know if that's changed in the last week or so. I know that you discussed it today, but this is something that I think is a real benefit to the city. I think it's a major benefit to our businesses. And if you really want to grow business in the city of Darien, I think this structure is a structure that will really work. And
Mayor, if you said it, I missed it, I'm sorry, but we did not talk about the aspect of the community events necessarily for the public. So this past year, we had April run our concert series, which it went very, very well. Many people were happy. Of course, we always would like attendance to be larger, but those events that we had, maybe some events like the Darien Fest, would also come to the city. So one of the items that is mentioned, but we do not know the numbers for that. We didn't get that far in terms of revenue to the city. So if we ran the Darien Fest, we hope that would be able to put some money and funnel some money into the city for more business programs and other things. Plus, we're already this past year had paid for those services, so there's a little deduct there if you do both. But I know, as Mayor and I talked, and some of the aldermen and alderwomen might feel like that, we'd really like to build on the concert series. We had 3, and we didn't know exactly how those were going to go. We didn't know if residents would really like those and want to come out. So now we're talking again about those, maybe some additional ones, maybe a fall fest, a spring fest. I think this particular year, the Christmas tree lighting is getting enhanced, and I think that is something, if the city council sees the benefits of that, we'd certainly like to put more time, effort into those activities also.
In addition to that, and we're not charging membership. If you look at Westmont, you look at Burr Ridge, you look at those communities, they have sponsorships. They actually go out to their businesses and say, would you sponsor the car show? Would you sponsor the sidewalk sale? Would you sponsor this event? Would you sponsor that event? Our feeling is that if we bring members into the Chamber of Commerce, we're not going to charge them a fee, and we provide them a program which is beneficial to them. When our executive director goes out and seeks sponsorships, we think they'll be more willing to join in on those sponsorships. So that's another aspect that we look at too, but the community activities are critical as well. And with that, I'll shut up, and Brian will shut up, and we'll let you ask questions. Mary?
Well, another thing I noticed in reading through the material, and I honestly think this has been like quite a while building and coming because of conversations we've had through the years. And also, I'm the liaison with economic development and the chambers in connection with that organization. We've got Tom's on economic development. So it's just, I think it's been like a natural progression that we get to the point we are today. But I also like that it also connects the organizations in Darien that have not necessarily chosen to be a part of the chamber, and a lot of the nonprofits and groups that now belong to this Darien Connects group that meets monthly, they'd be automatically part of the chamber and community engagement group. So I feel like it's going to only, we've started this Darien community calendar, but it's only going to strengthen our community by connecting more of our businesses and our nonprofits. It'll also hopefully tie into our schools and the organizations within the schools, the park district and the youth groups and youth leagues. So I think it's a win for everybody. I guess my question is, with the fact that the chamber has had a fairly successful year, what happens if this was to move forward to the money that they have in the bank?
Kelly, tell me if I'm wrong, but we've discussed this. Your bylaws indicate that money that you currently have, if you were to dissolve the chamber, which you would under these circumstances, that money would go to charitable groups.
Under the bylaws, yes.
Under the bylaws.
So then,
That wouldn't come to the city.
in this premise, the chamber doesn't exist as an entity within the city? The chamber no longer exists at all? Like, or don't you belong to like the National Chamber of Commerce and other chambers? I mean, so is there no longer a Darien chamber?
No, the Darien Chamber would be under the auspices of the city of Darien.
So, but they'd have to dissolve as the way they are now?
Right, and then, but we would still have memberships with all the different, we would still attend.
You couldn't merge the current organization in with the city?
Well, that wouldn't work.
It's a work in progress. We're a corporation right now.
Okay,
so we
got it.
have to dissolve.
Yeah, okay. I understand. That makes sense.
And by working, Mary, you're talking about that part, because obviously it's different because we want to extend it to everybody.
Right.
Whereas it's limited, so, but you're specifically talking about working in, you were asking if you could work in some of the things like memberships and that type of thing, if I understand.
Right, well, I just wanted to make sure I understood that there's still going to be, even though if this premise was to move forward, there still would be a chamber of commerce, that there's still, because that has a brand, that has a reputation.
It would be the Darien Chamber of Commerce, but the employees would be the
City of Darien.
So when we did the annual budget, we'd present, staffing, we'd present training material, whatever would be normally in a budget for community development or police would now be in our budget. And we correspondingly would show whatever revenue we think we might get from this, or at least some offsets.
Or like the non-Darien residents that choose to become members would pay the city then to be members of the chamber.
Right.
Okay, and then I guess what happens to these fine people? Do they still have a role as board of directors?
Well,
Or is it going to be a commission like we have our economic development commission? Is there a chamber commission, a community outreach commission?
The chamber, the executive director would work with different business groups. In other words, right now there's a board of directors, and April depends on that board of directors for input in terms of planning events. Under the new setup, the executive director can call in Nick Darien, Mike Fields, Andy Blumenfeld, and bring them in and say, can you give me your ideas about how we run this? Or Kelly, or Tom Saylor, or Tom Pappas. And she could solicit ideas. But she could also bring in people who are in the food industry. You know, we have people who own food businesses within Darien. You know, outside of a board of directors, she could bring in those groups. She could bring in individuals in terms of planning those kind of things. So the liaison, the business liaison, the secondary position, the part-time position, that individual would report to the Economic Development Committee. That person would be making reports back to Economic Development, which would also feed back into the city. So there is a body of people who will be on that Economic Development Committee who will hear what's going on within our community, as will I, as will the mayor, as will Mr. Gombeck, as will Jordan. But the executive director of the chamber in general will be someone who can bring in groups, all different individuals within the business community, because it's critical to have business input.
Oh, absolutely. But it's also been critical for events like Darien Fest and Darien Dash that you have workers. And I mean, so if you don't continue to have a group, a commission, a board of directors or something, your foot soldiers, I mean, we're not going to be there rolling up. I mean, we could, but I mean, who's going to be the field soldiers, the people doing all the work?
Yeah, as Joe mentioned, that's
Because it's not just going to be those two people that could be on city staff.
Yeah, and that's been the backbone of the chamber, at least the 20
Oh my
years
God,
I've been
that's
here.
how they've
The
survived. It's because of
volunteers-
all these people that have
That's
busted
right.
their butts.
The volunteers, and we would leave it up to the person responsible for this to use and try to get those volunteers as they do now. So if
Yeah, I guess I just would love to see a more formal structure in place, you know, and whether it's a commission or, I mean, that's maybe a conversation that if this does move forward, that can happen later. But I think you need to have something in place where you have an existing committee.
My only hesitation with that, Mary, is if we say these 6 people are going to be on a commission or a board, then it's just those 6. I would like something that's more broad-based, where the executive director has an opportunity to bring in people.
Oh, I think they do too, but I just feel like I'm a professional volunteer my whole life, and you always hope that, you know, hundreds of people will help. You hope that 30 people will help. But at the end of the day, it's usually 10 people, and it's the same 10 people that show up all the time that you can count on. So I'm just saying, I want to make sure that, you know, that there's a base there of support formalized for the executive director, the liaison, and all that.
Tom, you want to come forward?
Sure. So most of you know me. Tom Pappas. I've been resident for 33 years here, business 26, chamber 15 plus. I'm fortunate to have been selected to be part of economic development, and I'm in the Lions Club. So pretty much I know everybody here. And I thought it was a good time to talk a little bit, because exactly what you're saying is what our feelings were also. This was, and everybody on our board is here. I have a wonderful board, and Kelly and April. And this was really about the first time as we got to look at the goal-setting memorandum on this, that we could really discuss together, because we were able to now see exactly what Darien was looking for as being taking kind of over the chamber. But as a whole, we feel it's a great idea. Of all the things that you said in terms of, you know, trying to get funds together for all of our events and things like that. But we kind of feel that to better the proposal that has been proposed here, that we would have some kind of a formalized advisory committee. And yeah, it'd be great. I think now if we are including everybody as a chamber member, we are going to get more people who are going to want to, come in and be part of that, be part of an advisory board. But we have a wealth of knowledge and how things have done with the chamber for many, many years. I mean, I've been on the executive board now for probably 10 years. When I first started, Tom Saylor was the chairman. So we've all kind of, and he came back because he felt like, the chamber was a really good thing to be part of again. Andy Blumenfeld did the same thing, and we've had Nick Darien for many years, Mike Field, April, and Kelly. So just the knowledge of how to run a Darien Fest and how to, who you reach out to and all that is knowledge that would be, I think, would be valuable for the success of those events. And we would be better as a whole working together with that. So that was kind of a little bit of our thoughts as we read through the memorandum and to see, what the proposal was. And again, we're 100% all in favor. We just feel that if we had a formal advisory board that was pretty much still in a liaison between the two paid employees that you're looking at here, I think that it would work 100% better.
Just as long, Tom, as we didn't fail to see that there were other people out in the community, business
absolutely.
leaders who might want to have input as well. My only concern about a board is that board, if you had a rotating board where you had a group of 5 individuals and they provided input to the executive director, and every 2 years that board changed out or several members left, and we have an economic development committee, and the term of office is 2 years, and every 2 years we need to bring in a new person in place of that person. So I think that's healthy, and we look at our other commissions the same way. Our police pension board, all of that. These people are there for 2 years, they leave. If you're talking about a structure like that, I would be more open to that.
Well-
I don't want to exclude businesses that currently don't participate. I want to open it up and have people see that the Chamber of Commerce is available for all of them.
Well, I think we would all agree on that because that would be great. Okay, I mean, I've been doing this for 15-some years now. I could take a break. So it's not even that. It's really, I think by having some kind of advisory board, we are going to involve businesses that more than just 2 people that are running that in with the city. We'll involve that, and I think doing something like just you said, Mayor, is a very good idea. Okay.
It might be helpful if, and maybe April could do this, or we could just talk to understand that a little better. Because an advisory board, maybe there's a group of volunteers that would help April with the Darien Fest. Then there's a group of volunteers that might help with the concert series. So I don't know if you're talking about the boots on the street like you all do now for different events, or if you're talking more about a standing committee that would help April with, a variety of issues. So maybe the nitty gritty of what you're saying, you could explain, or April could explain to us, so if the
Well-
council wants to move forward, just so we understand.
Well, I think as a board, we want to discuss that, okay, and
Okay.
how we would do that, because it's still a relatively new concept here. But I think we're all on board wanting the same thing.
And
okay?
as the mayor said, we did, at least in the job description, we tried to touch on that, Tom, not
Yeah.
as formal as you're saying,
Yeah.
but put in there that the individual will be able to seek volunteers.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was our intent, because we know all the work
Yeah.
that the volunteers do, so.
Well, as Mary really pointed out,
And we did not coordinate anything, I swear. I just
no, but I'm just saying.
as I read through it, I was
she
like,
knows who comes out every time to volunteer and things like that. So, and if this advisory board will change, or it doesn't even have to be called advisory board. That group will change, okay? And it will change based on different businesses and different leaders of the business community wanting to be involved, which I think that would be, I just make this whole thing much, much stronger.
April, you had your hand up.
So I think the difference
Why
here,
don't you come forward, April?
the difference here is between an advisory board versus volunteers. And to Mary's point, their term is all 2 years. But as we open it up to the membership, same people step up for the responsibility. Anybody that's a valid member in our community is welcome to be on the board. But we get the same old, same old.
How I would see this, if it did take place, I'd see it very similar to our committee or commission structure now. Because the city would be paying the employees. This might be something where when this advisory group or commission met, Jordan was a part of that, or I attended those meetings like I attend economic development, because the city is your employer. And while we appreciate the advisory board, the city is still, it's under the auspices of the city. Just like now, the Planning and Zoning Committee, they make recommendations, but the city council still has to approve those things.
But nobody knows business better than the businessman.
I understand
And
that.
some of our board here are business members outside of the Darien community, and that was the concern too, that should this go strictly to Darien, you're gonna lose a lot of dentists, real estate agents, things of that sort. And they are taking a vested interest in the success of this.
I just don't want to see businesses that currently don't belong, who would come into the fold under the new setup, sit back and say, well, it's still the same people running things.
Well, even the current membership that's been members for many years, they're given that opportunity. Some people just like to have it's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. I belong to the Darien Chamber of Commerce, and they're happy with that.
I mean, this has the potential of becoming one of the largest chambers of commerce.
It'd be huge.
Yeah.
Probably before we get too far, we should hear from the council.
Oh, absolutely.
Just in case.
Mary was a good
We just
introduction
had a
to what
meeting.
we
had a
were
meeting
at,
like
so,
2 hours ago,
yeah.
and we thought, who'd she hear from?
I didn't hear from anybody. I
Anyway,
just,
so we just thought it was a good segue.
Sure, Mary wasn't there for that meeting?
no, I was not. I was doing laundry for my vacation.
Love to hear.
Yeah, I'd like to get some input from
I worked in committees and organizations and structures, so that just jumped out at me as something, a missing link in this. So that's all.
Ted, how do you feel?
Do we need up?
No, that's fine. That's fine. The biggest thing is I like the idea, okay, but from what they're saying, this is what we need to do. Backing up with Mary, if we can work together and put something together like this, I'm for it. But I definitely like the idea that this core group that they bring on up and how they presented it, because Mary's right. You do have these same people all the time, and those are your core people. 80% of the people, or 20% of the people to 80% of the work. So,
Lester?
I guess my only concern is it going to increase our costs? By taking on this new responsibility.
It's going to mean the employment of 2 salaried employees, with a lot of that, hopefully that revenue coming back from the different activities, et cetera.
So we're hoping to get more sponsorships to support,
Right.
that we host.
Right.
Well, in the
Bringing more
packet, we
business
did
in.
put the estimated cost of the
2
1.5 individuals. We did not put in there anything we might recoup if the sponsorships grows, or if we do if we're able to have a profit from Darien Fest like the chamber hopefully does every year now. Will there be a net gain or loss? I would think it will take some time to really work on sponsorships if that's the way it goes. Again, whatever the numbers are in the memo. My computer just shut off, but whatever those are gives you an indication of the cost. So yeah, there's the cost. It's nothing free, but it's we'll have
$130.
computer, we'll have
$130,
other
yeah.
ancillary costs too, but primarily, like almost everything, it's personnel, and those costs are identified.
And we think the return on investment with regard to those 2 employees is going to be well worth the expenditure. Joe?
So a couple of things come to mind, and same as what Mary said. I belong to Rotary. I know what it's like to put a Rotary Grow Fest on. It's the same handful of people that are putting it on every year. Okay, but it was interesting. I thought about what you said, and I heard about what Tom had said about hey, I've been doing this for 15 years. Hey, I'd get a chance to sit back. So I'm just when I hear that, and I'm just wondering, okay, how many other businesses will think, well, the city's got it, so we don't it's not as important for us as a group to step up because hey, the city's got it. And then I'm also asking the question, what's the percentage of businesses that are in the Chamber of Commerce that are not in Darien? Mike, I think you're in Lamont, right? Tom, you're in Downers Grove with me. What's your percentage of non-Darien businesses that are in the chamber?
Last I counted, which was a while ago, there was about 33 businesses that were not in Darien.
Okay.
Out of about 150.
And as a city, we would have responsibilities. Is if they're members of the Darien Chamber, which is part of our umbrella, and they're in Willowbrook or Burr Ridge or whomever, are there thought that we're going to have to pay city Darien tax dollars to those businesses in those communities? So I mean, I'm not saying I'm not one way or the other. But these are just questions that are just coming into my mind. There's a portion of the Darien Chamber that's a 501c3. Yes, no, okay. So when we're talking about sponsorships and
501c6.
So
It's a membership organization, same
Okay.
thing.
Same thing?
Not for profit.
okay, so if they get, if they dissolve that and they're coming up onto the city of Darien, do the businesses that are typically sponsored, do they lose any tax benefit by sponsoring? Because now it's run by the city. They're under the city of Darien umbrella versus your 501c6.
Okay. I'll take a little stab at this. My background was as a CPA in taxes.
I'm just curious.
As a C6, you don't get a charitable contribution deduction for it. As a 501c3, you get a charitable
Right.
contribution deduction. So they were never getting a charitable contribution deduction. But if you have a legitimate business and you're part of the chamber, it's part of your advertising
you
budget
get-
or something.
you're taking it off
else.
anyway.
So it wouldn't be a
Okay.
charitable contribution, but it would still be a tax benefit theoretically if their accountant's doing things right for them.
I'm just afraid that some of the memberships will say, well, Darien, well now they're part of Darien, so I don't. All I gotta do is just write my check and I'm done.
Maybe we should try to, Joe, I think you had a couple questions, Mayor, if you'd like, we could probably answer some of these, or try as we go around.
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael?
Or I'm sorry, but Joe had a couple questions, maybe.
Because
we
isn't there
could
going to be a
take-
fee associated with non-Darien residents to become members of the chamber?
Yes.
That's
there-
what it said in here.
Yeah, there would be
Yeah.
a fee.
There'd be a
So,
fee.
We
Okay.
have to look at, what we have to do is look at the business license fee now that our businesses pay. And take a look at what that covers, and then determine a fair amount. It would be no less than a business license equivalent. But I have to make sure if there is, if there is money above and beyond, we need to allocate. So maybe it's not the same as a membership. Maybe it's 20% higher than a business license. That we need to work out. But the intent is, yes, there would be a fee.
Well, what is the chamber membership now versus the business license fee now?
Regular membership is $225 a year, not-for-profit, $150.
Okay,
And business license fee, it depends on the business
Right.
and your square footage.
okay.
So we'd have to get a list and
Okay.
we can answer that. But Joe, I think, this would be no different than reviewing the code officer in Dan's department or anything. If it's not working out to the expectations, it comes to the council every year for some type of review. So if in a year we said, wow, there's nobody volunteering, the employee's doing all the work, now it costs $40,000 for public works stuff, we would evaluate that. So you will get a stab at this
Okay.
every year just to see how it's going. I don't know that, in thinking through this, I didn't have that same concern, but it was a different conversation. But the city council would have at least annual reviews, if not every council meeting, really. There could be reports from the employees, there could be a number of things that the council could use to make sure it's doing what we want it to do.
And they would still be calling it they would still be calling it the Darien Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
The name would stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, we assume that, but nowhere
Okay.
in here it says,
Right.
oh, here's what we're going to call them now.
And the reason I'm raising that is and that's for a contingency plan down the road. Let's suppose that you come into the city, and say 2-3 years down the road, we're finding out, it's not working to where we thought we would work, and we need to let it go. They would still have the ability to go back as the Darien Chamber of Commerce, but back to square one for lack of a better term. Yes,
Yeah,
no.
we talked, because we have it under municipal services, we talked about what that could be. Would it be the chamber and events group? We tinkered with that a little bit, but it could be whatever anybody wants it to be.
All right. Those are my thoughts. That's all I got.
Mike?
Yeah, several thoughts naturally, most of them financial related, but you just sort of addressed one of them, Brian. If I were to support this, number one, I think it relates to sort of some of the comments that were made already. Financially, do we want to have city residents responsible for a business group like this? I think there's a lot of benefits to it, don't get me wrong, having the benefits, supporting these businesses and everything else. Number one, in order for me to support it, I would want this set up as a separate fund, so we have a separate accounting for the profit, all the expenses, so things aren't getting jumbled and, we have miscellaneous sundry here, we have that there. I'd like to see it all in one place, so every year as we are going through the budget, we can evaluate it and say, okay, we lost whatever we lost, or
Right.
we made whatever we made, and we make the decision
Yeah,
going forward
Mike,
there.
for that, my intentions were, because it not to do a separate budget, but to do all separate expense accounts through the system. It could be however we want. It's like project code.
It still gets jumbled, because, having the separate fund, if you notice, when we prepare the monthly statements, we have the revenue by fund,
Yeah.
and we have the expenses by fund, so theoretically, any of us could look at it from month to month and see exactly where it stands. That, I would think, would be the minimum from a responsibility standpoint that I would want to see as the city treasurer, and to be open with the residents as far as how the thing is functioning.
Yeah. And to me, Mike, that's more, that is to some degree how the bookkeeping goes, and whatever makes sense, I don't care. I mean, again, I'm envisioning us, like we do on Dan's project, what is the rear yard drainage project cost versus the residents? And we have project codes, but to set it up like
But
that,
if I asked you that question today, could you put a sheet of paper in front of me? You couldn't do that.
I surely could if Julie was here.
After you asked her to pull everything together, but what I'm saying, I think on a month-to-month basis, we should be able to see something like that.
No, I'm not disagreeing. All I'm saying is, there's a way to do that accounting wise, and whatever you think. We defer to you on most of that stuff, and what you think is the best, we certainly do that. I just was trying to avoid a separate department, but maybe that's not the worst thing either.
Well, I don't think it's responsible to just jumble it all with everything else, where we have to throw more on Julie or somebody else.
God rest his soul. If that was John Podorowski that said that, I would clarify jumbling so we don't jumble anything. But anyway, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Joanne?
No, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I'm
I've
sorry.
still got some.
I thought you were done.
I've got a ways to go. So number one, I'd want to see a separate accounting. Number two, while we're talking about charging outside businesses, when my partner and I started our practice, we started in Downers Grove. We belonged to the Downers Grove Chamber. It was $200 or $300 a year, whatever it was. We joined for a couple of years. After a couple of years, we said, okay, enough of that. We were only being exposed to smaller businesses. We wanted to concentrate on something bigger, so it wasn't giving us exposure. Just our decision, which is fine. And we're saying we have outside businesses that are members now that would like to continue on. And I think you've addressed that question, maybe not to the exact dollar, but they will be charged some kind of dues because if it's being paid by the city, and these are outside the city. There's one group, though, after we moved our practice from Downers Grove to Darien, I must have asked Maria 5 times upstairs, how come I'm not paying a business license? We moved our accounting practice into Darien. Why aren't we paying a business license? She said, you don't have to. You're not a business subject to the license. I asked her today, and I don't have the total definition, but doctor's offices, accounting practices, law offices, insurance, real estate offices aren't subject to business licenses. So these businesses could be Darien businesses, not putting anything in and yet getting the benefit on it.
But Mike, that's half. They are charged a zoning review every year. So by statute, an attorney, a dentist, those services do not pay into a business license. but we do bill, and I forget, Jordan, it's zoning, we call, zoning compliance. And those are billed out every year. I don't know the fee on those.
I
Marie.
believe they're called a certificate of compliance,
Yeah.
which is a little different than the business license.
But who pays those? I mean,
They do.
I never did.
I-
I mean, we moved here to Darien in
Yeah.
1997. We sold the business in 2010. I asked Maria many times about a license.
And
never
we got to
did.
go back those 13 years.
You owe some back
Receivables, pretty
taxes,
big.
back fees.
We're liquidated a long time ago, but.
Yeah.
what-
No, they pay. I mean, that's, we have that, and they do pay, but I'll get you the details tomorrow. I don't have that ordinance in front of me.
Yeah, I'd really be interested in that. But other insurance companies, real estate, they're all paying these doctor's
Anybody that's
offices?
exempt from state statute.
It's in our code, yes.
Yeah, but
It's-
I've never, like I say, I raised the issue
You
myself.
didn't get caught, Mike.
We
multiple-
emailed it, Mike.
I
You weren't on email
volunteered
yet.
it. I volunteered it.
Well, that's for tomorrow. We'll show you that tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me.
But anyway, again, if that's a $25 fee and the rest of them are paying a $200 license, I think there needs to be some analysis of that to put everybody sort of on an equal footing. I understand what you're trying to do, saying you're paying a business license, so there's no point in duplicating in this case. But again, if we want to be responsible to the residents and try and operate it, I would think we would try and operate it on at least a break-even basis. Nice if we make some money, if we lose a little bit of money now and then it goes up and down, but we get a lot of ancillary benefits for the business community and other things to being more involved with them, I can support that too. So I don't have
There's a
problem with
couple
that.
things, Mike, with that, and we, the mayor and I, when we talked about this, we did look at it as two steps. So as an example, if the city council said, well, we don't want the chamber part, but we want the recruitment part, there would be no payback for that. We would
Right,
just be
mhm,
our employee
yeah.
recruiting businesses.
but-
So I think that needs to be part of the analysis. And I don't know yet that we would break even. I think we do have to work much more on getting sponsorships. I will tell you, me personally, I will never knock on a business's door and ask for sponsorship. I do not like to do that. I don't like what it implies for any of us to do that. Now, people really do want to contribute, and they do that. So I think it's fine if a business goes to a business. So that nitty-gritty, I think, needs to work out. But I don't know that it would break even.
Well, and it might not, but if we have those numbers on the separate fund or on those separate financials
Yeah.
every month, we'll be able to tell. And if if we're losing $40,000 on it, we can evaluate.
Well-
Does it make sense to lose 40,000?
But the other thing, Mike, the intangible is the growth of the business community.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I
That's
mean,
why
if having a business liaison person and having a chamber of commerce as part of the city results in additional sales tax revenue, different types of businesses, I mean, how do you measure that?
I agree, but on the other hand, if the numbers on the statements are showing a $300,000 loss, there I get a little bit more touchy about, okay, is it worth $300,000 loss for this touchy-feely, good feeling there, or is it worth $40,000? By having these numbers, I think then the council has the ability to evaluate it from year to year, whether it's continuing to make sense.
And one of the things as we go through, I'll just use the example Darien Fest. What this means is we would put on Darien
I
Fest.
understand that.
Okay, I'm just saying, so
That's
if the
revenue.
council wanted to put on Darien Fest, so part of what you're talking about, hopefully we would iron out more as we go through the budget, because the incoming revenue or surplus is dependent upon activities we might have for the community.
Right.
Mostly that one, but.
Just look at it this way, Mike. It wouldn't be the chamber going to the park district asking for the park. It would be the city of Darien going to the
So
park
what difference
district.
does it make who they say no to?
Well,
You done, Mike, or did you have a
No,
couple? Go ahead. Okay.
one more thing. The way they've been talking about transitioning is they would have to donate their funds. They had a good year. They've got funds available. What I would like to see, it does sound like there's a lot of open questions here. I think we're going in one direction, but I think there are some open questions. Maybe they continue operating the way they are, assuming we're going down this path. They continue paying the salaries we take, assuming we decide to go forward with this. We continue planning next year's Darien Fest, next year's concerts and everything, and they work those balances down, which is probably what they'd be doing this time of year anyway, and then they would have less to worry about disgorging later, and would be less of a commitment from our standpoint, and then we can pick it up starting the
they would
next
have to
fiscal
give
year.
us that money, and they shouldn't be giving us
No,
that money.
not giving us
No,
the money.
he's saying, like,
in effect,
hit
it's
the
the same.
pause button on a
it's
transition
the
until
same.
they've drained those funds.
Mike, in fact, it's the same thing. What you're saying, they have to give it to a charitable group. We're not a charitable
What if
group.
they just continue operating right now? We say,
No.
okay, we like the idea, but May 1st, we just
No.
Well, but what you're saying, Mike, the date is not determined yet. I think what we're saying here is if the council likes this idea, we want to start sooner than later and hopefully by the end of the year. And really, if the council said, well, no, we want to start May 1st with the budget, in effect, it's the same thing. Because they would have to run the chamber
Right.
until then.
That's,
So
that's exactly
See,
what I'm saying.
but we want to start now, because the Chamber of Commerce sends out their bills for membership in January. And we don't want them doing that. Or in December?
They can prorate it. If we decide to move forward with this, they can prorate it 4 months, 5 months.
But then we're losing the time that our business liaison person would be out in the
Those are my
community.
comments.
Joanne?
I have a question regarding the renewal, the business licenses and the certificates of compliance. I believe that we do provide that information to April. She's allowed to have the businesses, and I guess my question is, how do you entice these people to join the chamber? Right now, if you do it this way, you're just increasing the numbers of who is a member, but maybe they choose not to participate. You do reach out to the people that we give you the business license listing, correct?
So I've never voluntarily been given the business license?
No,
I
you
don't-
have to ask for it.
Okay, which I do.
Right.
And the other issue is, there was supposed to be a packet when people applied for a new business license. There was a letter that was with an application for the chamber, and I don't know if that's still given out or not through City Hall.
That I don't know, but see, the thing is that if you're giving it to the people as they're coming in for the business licenses, they have the opportunity there. This way, you're going to put them in there, and maybe all you're doing is increasing numbers with people who are not even interested in being a part of the chamber.
Well, the mayor addressed that, and he said, hopefully, and the intent is, you are inviting more people in automatically this way, and will this help grow? Nobody, and we don't have the crystal ball, but like any
Right.
department, any goal you set, you try to anticipate what will happen. And I know as we talked, the anticipation is by getting more members in, we should see some growth in the, hopefully, in the volunteers we're talking about, maybe people that want to get involved. Maybe you would get some more sponsorships. That's what we think, but
If you
know.
plan a program that meets the needs of different groups within the Chamber of Commerce, you're showing them a reason why they should be part of the chamber. I think these people are wonderful, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if they've always had an opportunity to plan all kinds of events that a person in the business community would say, I want to be part of that, or I could learn from that. I think a lot of time is spent on activities that possibly draw in the revenue. I do realize, Mike Fields told me one time, he said, when I do Darien Fest, he says, my business benefits from that because I gain from that. I learned something when Michael told me that. When these businesses participate in these activities, they'll see a benefit. But if April or the executive director has a program that's geared towards a group, and let's say she invites all the restaurant people in, and they have a speaker who talks about liquor licenses or gaming or whatever, they benefit from that. They're getting information they don't get now. Maybe they'll sit back and say, I'm happy I belong to the Chamber of Commerce. I'll participate more. Maybe I'll sponsor something, okay? I see that happening. Am I being naive? No, I don't think I'm being naive. I think that'll happen. I really do.
And one other question. You're talking about an employee and a half, and like Mike says, if the numbers aren't good, what happens to those employees then? If
Well, you're-
if it doesn't work out, if it doesn't pan out,
You
like
know,
Mike.
I do not anticipate this going, as an example, 1 year and saying, oh, this didn't work out. This you'd give a few years, but
5 years,
ultimately it'd be
yeah.
like other positions that we didn't need at City Hall, they would be eliminated down the road somewhere. If that were to happen, the
I don't think you should
business-
look
wait,
at this
wait, I'm sorry.
chamber as a money maker per se, but I can rest assure your concerns right now. Within our last year of business, we'd probably offset what you proposed in your
Yeah, I would
packet
think
right
so.
there, just with Darien Fest and Darien Dash.
But I think her question was
Now,
also,
going forward, if this position continues, it would also be special events like the concerts. That's something the chamber's never dealt with before as an income. So I'm just saying there could be potential income there depending on your sponsorship level. And sponsorships benefit these business people. They want their business name out there in front of different types of crowds.
But her question was specific to what would happen to the employees.
Right.
It would be like any city department. If it didn't work, that would not be reallocated in the budget, which we have done in the past.
But I'm just trying to adjust general questions and let everyone understand where we're at financially. It's not a moneymaker per se, but a lot of this could be offset.
Joanne? Anything
No,
else?
I'm done, thank you.
Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I remember sitting here 2 years ago asking that we should have some people on staff reaching out to businesses. So I think this is great that we're finally getting around to doing that. So at the time, you said you have enough people to do so. So I'm fully supportive of this. One recommendation, you had the.
Let me address each one so
Yeah.
I don't forget. This is more than what, if you talked about, somebody doing what you're saying, this is much more than that. So this is.
Yeah, that's great. That's what I pushed for
didn't
2
know-
years ago. I'm glad that everyone's on board. We're going forward. I think that's great. I agree with the mayor and all the points he made. There's a couple recommendations. You mentioned a potential business degree. I'd like to put that as required versus preferred. And for the reason I want some more creativity, more things done. So, for example, the chamber, Darien's a little older town. One thing I noticed some other towns are doing are a dog dash. That Arlington Heights has a dog dash, gets thousands of people to come up. Like some creativity and a little bit more marketing. So that's something that someone just can bring to the table. More of a marketing degree, sales degree, I think would be great as well. And I'm full support of it as well. But yeah, like for example, at Darien Dash, I felt like the flyers is reused every year. It's not updated, some different pictures, some this and that. So some better marketing I would like to see from the chamber. And I think part of that is someone with that marketing background, business background, sales background. So, but other than that, I'm in favor of this.
I think I spoke a lot earlier. I definitely feel like this is heading in the right direction with some tweaks. Obviously, there's some outstanding questions about current funds, transitioning funds, time frame, getting an advisory board, having committees for certain things. But I think as a whole, the premise makes a ton of sense to me. And I think it would be a win-win for the community, for the businesses, and I think it would open the door for us in an opportunity-wise to do more events, to expand the events we have, maybe to, with something that's been branded Darien Fest, even though the city of Darien has really had nothing to do with it. It's always been the chamber, which is part of the city. We are partners, but maybe there's modifications that can be made to that, whether it's the way it is, or things that could be added, or the location, all that. I think the concerts. I was at 2 of the 3. They were a success. I'd like to see more, and even other community-wide events. And just, maybe 2 of them will be able to work with the other organizations like the park districts, so that we don't overlap, and we'll be afforded the opportunity to work further in advance, because, I think it was amazing what was pulled off this year in really such a short a period of time. And it was and done really on a dime. I mean, it was like, very little budget and huge success.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I wanted to clarify one thing before we get going. Tom, you mentioned somebody with a marketing degree or
Correct. So, like, for example, some of the flyers I see seemed a little old, a little dated. So I'd like to see some of marketing background, sales background, besides just business and
I
accounting.
understand that, but so everybody's clear, the point of this would not to be for April to lose the job she is now. We would, as we're absorbing the chamber, we would absorb the employees. So what you see now is what we would like to bring on. Now, if the chamber, if this goes forward, the chamber has volunteers, or it comes back to a city council committee. Those are all certainly valid issues the elected officials could bring up. And then maybe, that just like you bring up now, for anybody brings up now for public works or police, ideas, thoughts like that, it would be no different. So if on specifically if you said, boy, we need a brochure, we need to do something better on a brochure. Well, now with the city, We have Amora, our consultant, who does a very nice job on brochures, on the newsletter. Somebody like that we have on staff, again, or the chamber could look through annual goals or objectives or improvements, just like every department. But I just wanted to be clear on the intent for staffing.
Okay.
Eric?
Can I just, well, and just, you brought it up, and it's like, the city staff isn't necessarily the ones that put together, like, we purposely hired a professional communications person, firm at one point, to help us with that, because, I used to do a ton of coordination stuff, but you have people that are especially gifted in areas of graphic design and stuff. So I feel like we would be able to utilize resources we have if we were all, in it together, and make things a little bit maybe splashier and things like that.
Gotcha.
That doesn't have to be like that one person's responsibility.
We should let the alderman finish.
Yeah, Tom.
Let the alderman finish so we can get, thanks.
I think Tom Saylor wanted to add something too. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, as Brian knows, a few months back, I wrote up a job description for this business attraction and development specialist,
Right.
which is really similar to what we have in here. I mean, right now, I've identified a couple specific businesses and talked to the owners that want to come into Darien. And I'm working with Dan Gombeck right now on those to try to grease the tracks to get those in. But that took me days to identify these potential couple. So this position, I think, is so critical to go out there, because there are businesses that are interested. The two that identified, they indicated this is the first time they ever had someone directly from the city contact them about interest in coming into the community. I'll be very honest, the brokers and stuff that are out there, to me, I don't see them doing a great job. Okay, and I think this position, okay, could really help facilitate the process, because there's a lot of potential out there, but it's a lot of legwork to really go out and reach and find those specific businesses.
And I think what we built in, Eric, on what you and I had talked about,
Yeah.
is this liaison issue,
Yeah.
where they're also working with existing businesses.
Right. Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's a
That's
strong
critical.
part of this.
Absolutely.
What you didn't comment on was the whole chamber aspect yet, if that's.
No, I'm in very much agreement to that. I think the more people we can get be part of the chamber, and I think not charging the fees, I don't see why someone wouldn't want to be part of the chamber.
Okay.
Tom?
I'm not sure what the reason they gave for not joining. Has it just been money? Has that been the guiding reason for it?
It's a combination of a few things.
Okay.
April, I'm sorry, you gotta talk in the mic because
Yeah.
people at home can hear you.
I'm just curious why they would pass on it.
I think as some of us age, the younger generation doesn't understand what it's about. Some
Okay.
people think you join the chamber and you got customers knocking down your door. I like to tell people a chamber just gives you more exposure and opportunities at our various events, and a lot of people like it to be part of our catalog. You go onto the Darien Chamber of Commerce and you're listed alphabetically, and you're also listed by if you're a plumber, an attorney, whatever field you're in. So some of that, yeah. It's a variety of different reasons. And some people are just overwhelmed. I mean, our restaurant community right now, as you probably well know, they can't get reliable help. Every time we try to have them out at something, they can't leave their business and be at an event too, and try to run the two of them. It's too difficult.
You're right. I mean, I took a tour last Friday of the Fry the Coop with the owner and went through the facility there. And yeah, he indicated, it's been very difficult for him to hire people. It's been a major struggle for him.
I go past, not so much here in Darien, but other areas I've traveled through, especially when you go through corporate centers and industrial parks, and they've got a million different flags, signs, and it all says, walk in right now and we'll interview you. In the old days, you had to schedule your appointment and show up. It's that bad.
Something happened the other night at the casino night, which I think is indicative of why having a business liaison person would be helpful. Mike Fields and I were having a discussion the other night at the casino night. And Mike talked about how I said, Mike, I'd like you to bring your business into Darien. And Mike said he'd like to bring his business into Darien, needing, not warehouse space, but you wanted to bring some printing presses and some other equipment into Darien. I left that discussion and I was talking to Bob Taft. And Bob owns the Q Bar Shopping Center. And I said, Bob and I were talking about some things, and I said, are there any openings in any of the businesses, the buildings around you, because the guy who owns the outlots also owns all those buildings. And Bob says, yeah, he says, I think there's some openings in the one section over by Concord. I said, Bob, come with me. We brought him over to Mike. Now, they know each other, but they probably never had this discussion. And Bob Taft is going to try to set up a situation where, to find out if Mike can have a location over there where he could bring in his equipment, some printing presses or whatever, things like that. Now, I facilitated that, but having a person whose job is to do that, that would have happened. That would have been something that would happen. And now, I hope Mike gets the space, and I hope Mike brings this, because I think he's a valuable business person in the city of Darien and a great contributor to the Chamber of Commerce. But that's why you need somebody to go out there and ask those questions. And I hope it works out for you, Mike.
I think Tom's left still. Tom
Belzak.
So my first question is, has any other municipality done something like this?
Westmont, if you go down Cass Avenue and you go right across the track, there's a building over there that currently has Deanne Mazaki's office, and there's the Westmont Office of
Tourism.
Business
Chamber
and
of Commerce,
Tourism.
business.
They have a full.
Do they have a separate chamber as well?
It's all part. It's
of one. It's all
yeah.
together.
It's all one.
So
The
I'd
city
like-
of Berwyn,
Mike,
city of Berwyn would be another one. Same thing.
Schaumburg,
the
too,
theory
I
behind
think.
doing this is
While separate,
You
they're
know,
in the
I
same
have no
building.
problem with the theory behind us doing this. The devil's in the details. There's not a lot of details in here as to structurally how it would work. I think the chamber feels the same way, or at least Tom did when he spoke. Is there going to be a commission? How are volunteers going to work? Joe made a very valid point. If you don't have a vested interest in the chamber anymore because you're automatically in it, are you going to keep volunteering? Hopefully, yes, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Well,
So there's a lot of questions in the details of this that I think need to be addressed. And so I do have concerns about getting this done by January 1st because of that. I mean, we're just hearing about this, 60 days before, whenever this went out 2 weeks ago. So the theory behind doing it, perfectly acceptable.
Well-
Hiring 2 employees, I think that makes a lot of sense for the city and for the businesses in the city.
One of the
How
reasons-
we do it, though, is what I'm concerned.
One of the reasons we wanted to get started with your approval is that we would like to develop contracts for concerts for next year. We would like to make sure that the businesses did not get billed for dues or membership.
I understand why we want to do it. I'm just saying
We
we're
want-
45 days away from January 1st.
We wanted to get a jump start on it, really.
And if we had this conversation in September, I would probably feel a lot more comfortable because I would know we have time to implement and figure out. It's we're creating something new apparently, or at least I'd like to see how Westmont does it. I'd like to find out how they make it work. Is it the same way where every business in Westmont is a
Well,
associate
I
of
think
this?
Westmont belongs to 630, don't they, Tom?
No.
No? They have their own.
30 is Woodridge and Downers.
Tom, I'm not familiar with communities I've worked in have not done this. This is a little bit out of the box, unique.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not.
So that's why I don't
aware
want to rush into something that's
Yeah, I'm
out
not
of the
aware.
box.
I think in terms of questions, I've heard some tonight, but I don't know how we could pinpoint those. Maybe if everybody could email me the specifics, that would be helpful. And then at least I would have I could write them all now, but I think if everybody thinks about it, and then if there's something else comes up, if you could send me those questions, I'll have them, in one spot, and we could certainly then answer those.
I mean, has there been any other thoughts about, and again, I'm just throwing this out there, keeping the chamber as an entity and having the city pay everybody's dues so that we have both things happening and as part of their business license, you are a member, and then the city writes a check to, we've 150 members roughly, you said? 225 each, $30,000. As part of our business licenses going, and we pay that, and then the chamber exists as it currently exists.
We did not, we discussed.
And I don't know if that's what people are looking for either, but it's a peace of mind thing, so you don't have to chase down businesses, and we can, and actually more businesses can still be involved that way. I don't know. I'm spitballing an idea on that, and I really wasn't sure, reading through the whole thing, that the chamber was going away from reading through the memo. It wasn't entirely clear to me that that was happening.
Yeah, I don't think that was very clear. It wasn't specifically put, but yeah, that's what would happen.
So, again, I think these are great ideas, and I think we should do something for it, and I don't have a problem with hiring employees to do it, but I have concerns about doing it too quickly without knowing the details of how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the intention, again, as the mayor mentioned, is to lock up some of this stuff. Well, I have no problem if we can get bands for next year's concert series. Pretty sure the council liked that and wants to include that again. So maybe there's a way. April was able to get bands last year. It was a pretty short notice, did a great job. But I don't know that we want to rush to do that because maybe there's other selections. So if there are aspects of this that we do feel we can bring forward, then we would just do those independently if there is a need. I don't know that we would do that for something as big as Darien Fest.
Right.
But some of the other things, if we do have that dire need, we would do that separately.
You know what I really would like tonight, I know you've got questions about the chamber aspect. It seems like most of the questions are regarding the chamber aspect. What I'd like to get tonight is your approval of the business liaison position, because I'd like to start that immediately. I'd like that to be something
The
that...
full-time employee, I would say yes. The
No,
part-time,
this would be the part-time.
Well, then I mean,
We
I
have the
guess.
ability to vote tonight?
No.
No.
You're just looking for a consensus.
I would like a consensus on that, because I think we gain by having someone working in that position.
Part-time position.
Yeah.
Mayor, how that would work is whatever direction the majority of the council gives tonight, we would work on something that you would actually vote on.
Okay, yeah, the
For
next meeting.
whatever you want to
Yeah.
do at a subsequent meeting, and probably it would be the first, we think we'll cancel the first meeting in December, so it might be the second meeting in December, that we could bring something forward to the council, plus it gives us some time to work on it. But you're not saying, you're not approving anything tonight?
Right.
Right,
other
no,
than
I
we're trying
figured
to
we
get
weren't, it's
direction.
not, yeah,
Right.
okay.
Tonight's was about you raising questions and asking questions regarding the proposal. We wanted to get your input. It's quite a different setup than what we've had, and like Brian said, there aren't many communities that have something like this. They have separate offices of tourism and such. Westmont's unique because they have the park district as part of the city, and they all mesh together, you know.
But I know April mentioned Berwyn. I know Schaumburg, because I had a friend that used to work for Schaumburg. They do it, as part of the city.
The chamber or events?
It's the Chamber Tourism Bureau.
Okay.
Most of our Chamber of Commerce, Tourism, and Special Events.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I'm just not aware of it, but I could check.
No, I'd like to. Yeah, I'd like to know more about it.
Tom.
I speak for myself, and I know a couple other members of the board of directors. My only concern is this: running a city and running a chamber are two different things. We run by volunteers. Our board is volunteers. Everybody that helps at events are volunteers. So if you do not put something into the ordinance, if you decide to do this, and if you put an ordinance together, if you do not put something in the ordinance that has not an advisory, that's some permanent, because I'll tell you, if you had a 2-year term, there wouldn't be anybody on the board of directors. These are people who have been around for 20 years. So you need some kind of a fixture in this ordinance that you have a sitting body representing the chamber. That's my only concern.
Thanks. Tom, did you have another statement you wanted to make? Pappas?
Oh. It was just more of just kind of expanding on what Alderman Tom had said about somebody with maybe marketing experience or something like that. For the position that you're looking for, there couldn't be anybody more do a great job than April. And if we need special things like marketing something, that's where committees come in that's from our business community that would come in and do those kind of things like that, because that happens all the time in all the things that we do. So, you don't have to go out and hire somebody special for that. It would come through what we're trying to do, even if we have a a group of, board members here, they're going to stay around and do, we'd have more time to do that because we don't have to worry about all the events and stuff like that too. So we'll be able to take care of all of that, and I know we do an outstanding job with that.
Yeah, I'm just looking
Okay.
for more ideas, some creativity.
Well, we would,
It's-
but I'm saying,
So,
but-
so if someone's been there
yeah.
20 years, the
But
thought is
one
like
person,
fresh
yeah, but one person
thoughts,
can't
you know.
do it. The hat that April would be doing for this, for the position that would be, there wouldn't be anybody that I could see would recommend anything better than what she could do. All right, she'd be the best possible person for that situation. But everybody needs support and help and whatever, and that's where a board or what we would have try to reach out and get those kind of people. That's how that would work in order to, obviously do
Okay.
a much better job.
So who would
with
be?
those kind of
So would there be
things.
another than half person part time then? Is the person is the person a half correct?
Well, but
Person and a half.
But the person and a half is going to go out and really reach out to that person wants to be reaching out to really the business community themselves and finding out what they need and come back. So this grows, okay? And then, but then you still have to put all this stuff together, the events and the
that's
luncheons and all that. So that's where, a lot of all this stuff comes together.
I think that what the recruitment part you're talking about is currently Lou has just started working with the chamber to do some of that. If I'm not mistaken, is that?
Right. Well, Lou's going to reach out to the community.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that's what I'm asking. You have April now, who's in that full-time position, and you have now worked with Lou as the outreach person. So that's what I'm talking about. Lou Mallers.
Well, we haven't worked with him yet.
No, but,
he is-
I mean,
but that's his
I'm saying
position that
that's
he's
the
going to do.
intention.
Yes.
I thought I heard
Yes.
now that
Yes.
you would bring
Yes.
Lou on to do that work.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but yes.
All right.
Nick Darien.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts that during all these discussions, I think it's important that during this transitional period, that this board continue on, either call it an advisory committee or whatever, because there's all the experience that this board has had with regard to the events that the chamber has sponsored. Additionally, one of the really, I think, positive features of this idea is the potential for continuity, as time goes on, because people in the chamber and the board and so forth and on the city council it's going to change. However, with something like this in place, there is a strong capability for continuity. The other things, and kind of really came to my attention as I went out soliciting items for the casino night. People are happy to see somebody show up at their business and actually talk to them a little bit. Now, I understand there's been some outreach, but if however this is put into effect, is if there's a regular mechanism for either going out to people or having them come in, so there's that opportunity for one-on-one interaction. So, and the other item is, the thing that's always been difficult is getting volunteer staffing for the events. And so, certainly if that can fall out of this, that would be a tremendous success. So, thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I think, as Brian said, that we've got a lot of ideas from you tonight, and what we'll do is, if you have additional ideas, maybe submit them to Brian. And again, you're basically giving us input tonight. We're not voting on anything tonight. It's something that we would like to start fairly soon, but I understand that, we're not going to have a meeting, the first meeting in December, so we're probably going to have to hold off on any approvals until the second meeting in December. But I appreciate the input you've provided. You've given us some ideas. I thank the chamber people for being here tonight, for the healthy discussion you had, the ideas that you've submitted. I think that, when I used to teach a change theory course, I used to tell people that no change, no idea starts off as looking like this and arrives at the end looking the same way. Everybody gets to massage it along the way. And this is one of those items where it's going to get a little massaging in order to probably make it a better proposal. So we understand that. We heard some of that tonight, and we'll probably continue to hear a little bit more. But we're going to get there. I think it's an excellent proposal. I don't want to see the chamber running around having to run activities so it could pay its bills. I want to see the chamber doing things for the business community. And if an advisory board or a commission is part of that, I think that's a good thing. I can live with that and accept that. I just want to be open to all the businesses. Whether it's if it's a commission, I would like to see other businesses have input into that commission. Because I think that's how we all benefit. I think the business liaison position is an extremely important position because I can't just ask volunteers on an EDC committee to go out and formulate all those contacts. It has to be someone whose role is to do that, somebody who's there on the front line doing that every day. So I think both are critical. We meshed them into one proposal, so I think that created some additional questions, and I appreciate the questions you have. I appreciate the input you had. And again, we'll take all that in, and we'll work it through. Correct, Brian?
Yeah, again, just to solidify all the questions, if you have any more, just please send it over to me.
Right.
Mayor, do you still, because you did mention prior to like more conversation that you were looking for a consensus tonight or feedback from everyone on the individual part-time business liaison recruitment coordinator, since that is a brand new position, whereas the other full-time position already exists within the chamber. This would be a new position reporting to the city and like economic development. So do you still want to get that feedback tonight from us, since it is kind of its own entity, even though it was put together with the proposal?
Well, even though there's instances where both will be working together on community events, the business liaison person is really critical in terms of going out there and meeting businesses. The chamber is going to be putting together programs for businesses, and this individual will be able to go out there and give input to the April person and tell April what's going on in the business community. But even more, that person comes back to EDC, they come back to Jordan. We hear that input, and as that individual works that position more, they're going to find out more information, which I think is going to be real critical for us in terms of our making the decisions. And I think, we put in there in the proposal, I think if you look through it, we want that person to report back in terms of what's going on out there. We want to know. EDC meets once a month, so we get EDC's input once a month. This person, we can get their input every day in terms of.
Well, can you break that out separately from the chamber proposal, and so that that could be voted on separately and perhaps earlier than a chamber proposal?
I think that if there are questions with regard to the absorption of the chamber that keep us from making a decision until the end of December, I would like to see you at least formally approve through council the second position, the part-time position, and get that position going immediately.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
I'm looking, Mary, at the memo. It combines all the additional staff members. Obviously, the part-time position is the lower end of that. There's no benefits and.
But can you break it apart, is what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think both positions, it's critical to get the chamber situation rectified because they have things they have to do. If they need to dissolve the chamber, they have to go through a process of doing that. I don't even know, Kelly, if you guys have looked at that and what that's going to entail.
Needs time.
So I think you guys probably, if you have any direction tonight, I think the direction is you probably need to really look at your bylaws and see what you need to do to formally dissolve the chamber so you can answer questions for aldermen up here with regard to that. Because I don't think anybody wants to see you guys falter. We want to know that you're going to dissolve it according to your bylaws. But in terms of the part-time position, that's something I think we can get working on right away.
Mayor, in terms of the numbers I provided, I had a backup sheet, and that the business and community engagement coordinator on a part-time basis. That total with salary and some like Social Security, Medicare, that would be applicable, is $37,000. So that's not a big chunk of that money.
Okay. Part-time.
Correct.
Are people comfortable with that?
Just to be clear, these two roles are going to report to Jordan or Dan?
The intent was they would report to Dan like Jordan reports to Dan. But I will tell you that there will be times, especially as we're working Jordan into more things, that we would like Jordan to work. But ultimately, Dan, if they're in the municipal services department, they would report directly to Dan.
Tom?
Do we have, what they'll be responsible for? So for every month, do they need a report? Like, what are the deliverables? Like, deliverables in writing. So someone needs to talk for 3 months and we're like, hey, I talked to a couple of businesses, but that's all I did, right?
We could
So
have.
we need some deliverables.
We could have, well, this individual is going to be working with EDC. They're going to be working with Dan and Jordan. I'll give you, for instance, Lou comes into City Hall maybe 2 or 3 times a week now and sits down with Jordan and talks to Jordan. He was the individual I brought with me to Jam and Jelly the other day to introduce him to the owner. So I don't think I don't think while formally you may say he needs to report to EDC, he could come in every day and report to Jordan or report to Dan what's going on. In fact, he'll have an office here. He'll be seated in that same office with April, but he'll be seated at the next desk over. So he will be here. And because my office is right next door, I can go in and bug him. Although my hope is that he wouldn't be in that office very much. He would be out there on the street going out
We
and
would
visiting.
develop a formal
Right.
monthly type of report.
Right. And that salary that Brian mentioned is on an hourly, is for what, 14?
What's estimated, that's an hourly, yeah, that is estimated at, a part-time.
Part-time.
1,000, 2,080, 1,040 hours.
And again, as all of you know, there'll be weeks where they'll put in more hours and there'll be weeks maybe where they put in less hours, depending on that. But that's something I'd like to see take place right away. So as soon as we could approve something like that, that would be an advantage to us. Okay? Lester, you said you had something. You seem like you had, no? Okay. All right. All right. Chamber people, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a zoning code review for permitted uses. And this was Mary's idea, and I think this arose primarily through the vape shops in the city of Darien. There was a concern expressed regarding that and how it might be governed by ordinance or by zoning. I'll give you another, for instance. Today I got an email, I think Lester was copied on it as well, from Mrs. Knox or something with regard to the house next door is used as a B&B. And she was concerned about not knowing who's living there. I mean, some of them are short-term, some of them are longer-term. And her question was, she actually gave us 4 communities that actually had designs for, B&Bs. One community, you can only rent it out for 28 days. One community, you had to inform the owners of the homes next door that you had a B&B. So there are questions there that we could probably look at that all fall under this the zoning ordinance thing. But Mary, I'll
Right, I wasn't just, like I said, it came to light a little bit about the vaping and the smoking exclusive shops, because there's other businesses that sell it. And just like, we have so many liquor licenses and, the gaming licenses and the quantity of certain types of businesses in our community. It also brings to light, like, when was the last time we maybe took a hard look at the zoning ordinances as it applies to the city? Because, let's be clear, 5 years ago, and I don't mean to just keep picking on the vape shops, but, this is a new type of business. These businesses didn't exist. Other businesses that existed 10 years ago no longer do. So I feel like maybe it's an opportunity for us to look at ordinances. There's also, like, the Airbnb thing came up before too. I remember getting an email like 2 years ago, and I had asked Dan too, because I think that we have something on the books about short-term rentals. Am I right about that? Don't we have?
Not the short-term rentals, it's blood relatives.
Yeah,
it's
right.
finished
Yeah, so, Airbnbs is a new thing. I get messages a lot too about leaves burning and things like that. But I mean, going back to like the special use versus permitted use, I think, we just need to kind of review what, whether it's we do it or planning and zoning does it. I just think it's time, we take a look at that. And there might be things on the books already that people just aren't aware of. But, I guess a lot of my motivation stemmed from the second exclusive only vape smoke shop opening up in Darien. And I mean, as I drive around, I drive through many communities, as does everyone else here. I head south a lot because my family's in Orland Park, and it seems like every strip mall I pass along the way in probably 6 communities, any empty storefront has become a smoke shop because it's like the trend right now. But I'm not saying, we want to also encourage businesses to come to Darien, and we have empty storefronts to fill, but we also want it to be a variety of businesses that appeal to our residents.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple comments. I think, as we mentioned before, zoning is sometimes an art, it's not a science. And I think from the staff's perspective, our goal right now is to look through these uses, and where we see weaknesses is to come up with definitions. I saw something in here, it's called a dry goods store. I don't know what that is. We don't have...
Define it.
We don't have definitions for everything. So I think one of the things Jordan, Dan and I talked about is for us to just go through this list. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this in terms of the comprehensive plan will be scheduled for the council. As part of that, we will be looking at a rewrite of the zoning ordinance for mixed use. We don't address that real well. And at that same time, or close to there, Jordan would be looking at a lot of these definitions to beef those up. Uses to beef those up. Again, there's something in here is
Like variety
retail.
stores. So does anyone even use that term anymore?
No, there's a lot of terms that aren't used.
I think that's from like the 70s. Like, is dime stores listed?
Yeah.
Ben Franklin? I'm just...
In terms of a smoke shop, I mean, forever we've had cigarette shop now. I think at issue here is really what is the goal? And we'll keep using smoke shops because that's kind of what's on the table. Mm-hmm. So we could eliminate, as an example, let's say we did not have the 2 smoke shops. All the products they sell, you could still buy at gas stations. You could buy at all the other stores in town. So that's really, I think, at essence of what the council needs to determine. In general, zoning has to pass, the rational decision mode. Because while the council's responsible for zoning, you are also responsible for making sure property owners' rights, they have rights to their property, and those rights are fair. And I think it is sometimes hard, council may get comments, or I might, why would you let a vape shop in there? Well, because it's permitted use, and property owners have rights to things. If you don't want smoke shops, for whatever reason, that's a different reason. But if you're doing it because of the actual product, you're not accomplishing your goal. So I think that's really the discussion Eric and I have talked about. He's got a use, I know.
Were you looking at too, is capping the number of specific types of businesses too?
We're not.
Is that part of what we're doing or no?
No, our job, what we've identified. Jordan, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so I think, as Brian mentioned, this came up a month or so ago when Dr. Smoke came in. So really what staff's looking for direction on is, well, I guess getting back to Alderwoman Sullivan's point, I know that we've done periodic zoning amendments or text amendments through the years. Probably the last time we did a complete overhaul was 2000, I think, when the ordinance went in. So yeah, I think getting to Brian's point, staff is probably looking for direction to do a review of it and implement definitions within the zoning definitions section so we can better administer when new uses come in. As far as capping certain uses, staff doesn't have a opinion on that. That would be something that council would need to specifically say, hey, staff review model ordinances for capping the number of smoke shops or banks, for instance. But then the question becomes, what's the reasoning again? So I don't know if that kind of just reiterates what you said, but we're looking for direction just kind of to say, hey, go through the zoning text amendment through a public hearing of the plan commission, ultimately bring it to council. But in terms of specific uses, I don't think staff has any recommendation right now, but we'll leave it to you guys.
And that's sort of where it leads into the vision of Darien. So what's the vision of our town 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? That's how I seen the article in South Haven is, as you mentioned, what do we want to limit? What do we want in our city, right? If we don't have a vision of our city, then it makes those questions extremely hard. Are we a bedroom community? Are we have some manufacturing, some this, right? So that vision helps guide our zoning and what we want to allow or not allow. So that's actually why I put the vision thing on sort of goal session. It's like a long-term 10, 20, 30 year out. Brian reached out to the city administrator for city of South Haven, and there was a video there where they interviewed residents a little bit beyond the survey that we have, but what do you see us in 10 years? What do you see in 20 years? What do you see in 30 years? And depending on what you see, you can sort of go back in time and look at, what you want to limit in town, what you don't want to limit in town. We have smoke shops, but I'd be okay if a cigar shop and maybe no more vape shops, right? So depending on how you define, how do you see the city, and that's why I brought up that vision statement on the next piece, but it's sort of how it leads into defining certain ordinances and what do you want to see. As well.
The other thing too on putting a number on it, someone might think 20 banks is great. Another person might think 5 banks is great. I don't know. That's I guess an opinion, but I guess it's because I know Alderman Gustafson had mentioned that in the past. So.
Are we allowed legally to cap the number of, for example, vape shops? I mean, can we cap and say, okay, we've got X amount today, that's all we're going to allow in? I mean,
Yeah,
can we even
there's
legally do that?
Yes. But I will tell you, anything, if the city council comes up with anything or is interested, we would have to review with our attorney.
Yeah.
Because it's not, the same rule does not apply for all. And I will give you an example. Tattoo parlors.
Yeah.
Towns cannot outlaw tattoo parlors.
Okay.
You can regulate where they would go. There's court cases that's a freedom of expression type of business. So that's something we'll have to look at for any of those uses. Because we don't have that in here now, tattoos, and we don't have any parlors in town.
Right.
So that's something we would look at. But, you can do that, but you still, are advised to meet the rational decision test. And again, I think the smoke shop is somebody's impression, or they're worried about the impression it gives. Others might not be worried about that impression and might think it's a legitimate business. It's going to cause sales tax. Every individual is different. Every town is different. So if there are specific uses that you identify, we just need to do that and really have a sit down with our city attorney to go through that process and make sure the reasons why you want to limit it really are constitutional. But you do have the right, and some towns have done that. They've limited banks, and that was probably a back when they were still building a lot of banks, and they started popping up on every corner. So the long answer or short answer is yes, you can do that, but it needs review on each item.
Quick question. So we've talked about like the now I've lost my question. So give me a second. I waited too long.
Okay.
No. Because yeah.
So
It'll come to you, Mayor.
I'm tired.
So would it make sense that if everyone just reviews the list later on and questions they have, they email you and
Yeah, I mean, Jordan ultimately
or-
will coordinate this.
Okay.
So I would say if there's any questions related to the uses, because I don't think anybody wants to stay here tonight and go through
Yeah. So I
the
was
20
thinking-
pages.
Oh, come on, I was looking forward to it all day long. It's planning on it.
That's my guess, and I'm pretty sure there's a consensus on that. So, I mean, we could, the council could send that. It could go to Alderman Belzak's committee. There's a variety of ways, but we just need this first. We wanted the council to look at that, so you really know what our zoning ordinance says. In my opinion, while some of these are outdated, we really haven't had a problem. I think the problem comes if we had vacancies. Then we'd really, have a concern. But now I consider that cleanup and updating a lot of the things and really getting policy direction then from the council. If there are other items you are seriously interested in limiting or not having in the community. Again, the tattoo parlor might be a different example. than a vape shop because of the constitutionality. So.
You know, sometimes shopping centers or owners dictate where a business can go. I don't know if you know Shanahan's. Shanahan's is down in Woodridge. Rich Moore, I met him about a year ago and told him I like to have a Shanahan's in Darien. Rich called me about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and he said, I'd like to come to Darien, open up a second location. I need about 3,000 square feet. He said, do you have any locations? And I said, yeah, we have a 3,000 to 4,000 square foot space open in the Brookhaven Shopping Center. Currently, it's in Evolve, which is not in business anymore. He said, well, what about the owner? I told him about John Manos. He says, could you set up a meeting? I called John Manos. John Manos flew in from California and met with him on Friday that same week. What we found out is that Dottie's has an exclusive contract on gaming in that shopping center. Rich was going to open up a restaurant, gaming, alcohol, music, the whole 9 yards in that space. Jordan and I went about looking for other places. Jordan called up Darien Town Center. They got 12,000 square feet open. They said they would subdivide it and they would give him 3,000 square feet, but we would have to come up with an owner for the other 9,000 square feet, which we couldn't do. We went to Chestnut Court. Jordan made a call to Chestnut Court, and their broker says we don't allow gaming and or alcohol in our shopping centers. It's probably why they have the vacancies that they have. So, I mean, that was 3 centers that could not take a business that wants to come to Darien because of the center, the covenants of the center, or because of contracts that they already have. So sometimes what we want, we're prohibited from having because of things like that. Now, if you know 3,000 square feet somewhere in Darien, let Jordan know.
But Jordan made a really good point, and it's just part of the conversation, but not everybody will agree on uses.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the council feels about a vape shop. I mean, I've heard back and forth, you know, some talk about revenue, some talk what it wouldn't. But I'll give an example that was much harder, was marijuana. You know, it's legal in Illinois. The council had quite a discussion on that and a lot of activity. And it would be really hard to get through a zoning ordinance if there were a lot of things like that. So I'll just use that example again, a smoke shop. Is a majority of the council, is that something you really don't want anymore of? So I mean, we will really need to ask and answer some of those questions, and I just don't know the answers yet. Because if I had 5 of the elected officials tonight say, well, do the list, but don't worry about vape shops. It's not something that makes the town look bad. You know, I guess on some of these, if they become top of the list, we'll need to have that discussion, because I don't know what the outcome would be among the council.
You know, it's tough because we have a vape shop in Brookhaven, and if that, and this is just my personal opinion, just going forward with it. But if you had the building where it was, you know, that particular building has a lot of windows and you can see through, and it's like lit. He's got all the lights and stuff all lit up. If that were, say, just a typical building, you know, brick building with, you know, doors and stuff in there, and just had a sign over across the top of it, I don't think it doesn't look as bad. It fits in more with the businesses. I think it's just because the way that building just sticks out. I think that's why maybe some of us have, you know, the issues with it. That's just,
well, you know, Joe,
aesthetics.
right around the corner from that is a liquor store that sells cigarette products,
Right.
and they sell almost the same stuff he sells in the vape shop.
Right.
And that didn't bother too many people.
Right.
That's why is the issue here. The council doesn't like the sign. That's what you'll have to talk and decide.
Does the majority of the revenue from the vape shop come from vaping? Yes. Or does the majority of the liquor store
Come from alcohol.
revenue come from alcohol? Thank you. That's the question that's going to be.
Which gets
That
back
would
to
be-
why we need definitions.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right,
That's-
right.
And that's
Because-
exactly
And when have we over-penetrated the
smoke
market
shop?
with
Right.
stores that
Smoke
sell
sells
all the same
soft
thing,
drinks.
I guess. Yeah.
Is he a smoke shop? He sells soft drinks.
He's just selling
He
it
sells
because
Woodridge,
Doritos.
he's trying to soften
Woodridge has a
himself.
policy
Do
that they won't allow gaming in a restaurant unless the restaurant can prove that 51% of their revenue comes from food and beverage and not from gaming. And they say you got to be open for a year and show us for the year that 51% or more of your revenue came from your food sales and not your gaming, and then we'll give you gaming. I mean, so communities have rules like that.
Right.
You have no gaming, 100% of it's from gaming from food the first year.
You're right.
How does
Well, I'm just, thank you for putting this on the agenda for, it coming to the forefront, because it seems like not only, it wasn't just the vape thing, but there was other issues that I think need to be addressed. And like you said, it makes us realize that things need to be more defined. Some things might be outdated. Things listed, just have naturally expired in time, and new things have come to the forefront since, what did you say, Jordan, like 2000?
That was the last overhaul of the complete ordinance. We've had several amendments throughout the years, but that was the last time, yeah.
Is that it on the zoning then, Mary?
Well, it would be interesting if we, is there a straw poll of if the council had a vape shop, if you could ban a vape shop, would you do that? I'm just curious, you would?
I would.
A vape exclusive, like vape
Yeah, like
smoke,
what's
just an
just
exclusive.
open?
Ban it or just limit the number, I
No,
guess.
I'm saying if you had the opportunity, would you not have allowed the smoke shop that just opened? And I think Ted is saying he would not have allowed, if you had that flexibility. Lester, you saying you would?
I would not.
You would not allow it?
I would not ban it.
You would not ban it, so.
Joe?
But if we made it a special use, every time it came up, we'd have everyone get to look at it. Our hands were tied for Dr. Smoke.
Yeah.
He was voting on the drive.
Right.
That was the only issue
Yeah,
there.
special use.
If it was a special use if we change them to, instead of a permitted to a special use under all these, every time someone wanted to bring in a smoke vape shop, we'd have to approve
Now,
it.
that's a good idea.
And that would be, right.
Yes, that's what I was
I'm
kind of
just-
getting at.
Understanding, even under a special use, it's, if you have others in town, it's pretty hard to deny it. So it's not just, well, I don't want another vape shop. Once it's a special use and you've allowed them, you should have some reasons. But
Well,
I'm just
we
curious.
We would have to do the same for liquor stores too then.
But that's what we did with Dottie's, and once we said we don't want him.
With liquor.
Well,
That's the issue.
So-
The
what would be the
liquor is really a privilege, but your zoning is a right you have with your property.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
You're saying liquor store?
No, I'm saying we would have to do the same thing with liquor stores then.
Well, that ultimately be a question, because if we end up defining a smoke shop as an establishment with 50% vaping products, then you wouldn't maybe have to do that legally. But it still doesn't solve a goal of products.
Well,
Yeah,
gas
right, it would
stations sell
defeat-
vape, gas stations sell vape products, grocery stores do.
I understand. It's your, correct.
This business versus
If you don't like the product,
gas station or liquor store. they can sell
right,
the
if
same
you don't like the product, doing what we're talking about does no good. I'm sorry, Joe?
Personally, I don't want to see it. But based on what you've just said and what Maria's talking about, yeah, you've got a gas station that sells vape products. Are you gonna ban it? It's not something you can paint with a broad brush.
I would just look at it from where, how far away from a school. Could you add 2,000 extra feet? Like say the state of requirements 2,000 feet from a school. Can the city say it's 4,000 feet from Lay School? Do
And
they
what
have
would your
the?
rationale be? I mean, you don't have to ask me, that would be part of the question we go through. If you're going to have limits like that, you should have some rational or close basis.
Because
There's the same thing that happens now in Brookhaven, the stores across the street.
Right, and I like your rationale. Okay, but here's the issue with it. You've got to be 18 years old to purchase these products. Lay school, those kids aren't. What's the age limit? Are they 10? Yeah. Right. So it really doesn't come into play because you're not going to be able to purchase any of that stuff there.
So I understand. So Tom's talking about restrictions, which we kind of batted around. But again, if your goal is you don't like those products in the community because of health issues, then you really haven't achieved it because there's existing places
out
that
there.
sell it. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, you're saying about doctor's office, for example, we don't keep on main streets because we don't get retail revenue, right? So we try to zone those off side streets if possible, right? When we put the dental office near Starbucks there, we really wanted another restaurant, but because of parking and this and that, we allowed a dentist, the orthodontics come in.
I would have to ask Jordan, and in our
Well, yeah.
general business districts, offices are, attorneys and services are permitted, I believe.
Yeah, I guess in the business district, I'm looking that up, but I'm guessing there's some office, I don't know if there's office districts off Lamont or 75th off the top of my head, but.
I think doctors' offices, if I recall correctly, were special uses just due to the body fluids that could be produced.
So under B2, clinic, like a medical clinic, is a permitted use in B2, but it's a special use in B3. So it depends what district it
Attorneys,
is.
Jordan,
Attorneys, that would just be under a typical office use. So I see that being under the O district. It's permitted, but
So it's a mix, Tom, and I think
Yeah, it's a
that's-
mix.
Zoning tries to mix. Zoning tries to, it recognizes that if you go to see the attorney, you know that you're caught. So it's some balance that the council has a little control, but in my opinion, it's the market that controls a lot of that also.
Yeah, that building on the corner where the sign is broken, they have a lawyer, they have a State Farm agency, they have a doctor, they have a financial advisor.
Yeah.
They have a lot of it within that one building.
So Mary, you're a no, because you
Well,
already
I'm
voted
just,
no,
I
so
guess,
would-
well, yeah, I am a no, but I'm also like, it's like, I guess I look at it differently, the gas station versus an exclusive store that, yeah, might be selling soda and chips just as like a parting gift, as like, it's, their whole purpose is selling smoke and vape products. So, you know, I guess what's our penetration in the marketplace? Like, how many places do we need in our community selling these products? Like, do you know, and I'm not going to go back, Lester brought up liquor stores. Like, how many liquor stores does a community need? Like, we want to encourage other types of businesses. And I just feel like, you know, right now, 2 exclusive smoke vape shops is more than enough.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
Eric? On a smoke shop, would you have?
You know, to me, you get to a point of, I mean, who's going to open up another one? Okay, when there's such saturation anyway. I think it just let the businesses take care of themselves. I mean, I'm not going to sit there.
Through the market, market type
absolutely.
of thing?
Let them take care of them. All of a sudden, someone really thinks he can make another vape shop work. You know, good luck.
Tom, how about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way as Eric does, I think, on that. The business will dictate who wants to come in here. You're not gonna, you know.
So this was really, I mean, we don't need to know this tonight, but this is just an exercise.
Yeah.
What Tom, what you thought that a majority of the council and what I didn't know, now I'm counting there's 4 that probably would approve vape shops if they were there. So it's just, again, it was just an exercise to show how this discussion will go on certain things and for everybody to hear and really feel a little bit of what that discussion might be. It's not easy on zoning.
Because here it goes right now. Let's suppose, and someone like what Tom and Eric are talking about, the market dictates, and maybe some business decides, hey, okay, sure, we're gonna put one over in Chestnut. You know, we heard there's 12,000 square feet over there. You know, we got this awesome, and I vote no. Well, I got 2 in my ward. How in the name of God could I honestly do that? You know, so to your guys' point. It's let the market dictate it.
Okay, that was interesting, but.
I think the whole zoning conversation for everything, not just this particular topic,
yeah.
I think we'll learn a lot from it. We'll be educated, and I thank you for doing the legwork because clearly that's not what we're even should be doing because we're not the professionals. But I think, you know, permitted use, special use, different business districts, mixed use, I think we'll all learn a lot from it and maybe better understand and be able to vote in a more educated fashion down the road.
That was a great exercise to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a wrap,
Okay.
Joe, on that.
Any more? Okay.
So just to recap though, on that, you'll just send Jordan if there's anything on that list, just so we
Yes.
all.
We're supposed to
That's my
email
only
you.
recap on that, sorry.
Jordan,
I'm actually watching the chief age before my eyes.
Oh, yeah, I guess I should have brought that candy. Sorry, people. Everyone could use a little.
Hey,
something.
Actually, I'm watching Jordan age.
Hey, before we get too far in this, Jordan hasn't been here that long, and the way he sits there and the way he puts things together, you'd swear to God he's been here for the 20 years. Let me tell you, from just watching you in the last year, how fast you come up with answers. You're doing an outstanding job. I just want you to know that.
Dan has trained you well, I see.
I was gonna say.
Right.
We hired him all the way from California, if you might know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We get a lot of compliments on Jordan's work. We really do.
All seriousness, Joe, I know Dan and I echo that, and some of the commission members. And
But I don't think.
Thanks for bringing.
But I don't think a lot of people have an opportunity to know who Jordan is and what he does, and he's very, very instrumental to the day-to-day operation of our city.
It's interesting. I'll get an email on something, and I'll call Jordan, and Jordan's already got the answer. He's
Absolutely.
already dealt with it. So, yeah, he's good.
You can smile, Jordan. It's nice to get those.
Okay.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We got the evaluation.
Jordan, just don't let it go to your head.
Work to do is all.
Got my
that is.
evaluation tomorrow.
You're just getting more work.
All right. That takes us to number 4 on our agenda, long-term vision statement. This was something Alderman Klistak submitted. He became aware of a visioning process that was taking place in South Haven, Michigan. So I'll let him address that.
Yeah, I have a cottage out in South Haven, and I sort of watched their city councils and some of their direction. And one of the things they worked on is the vision of their city, right? Like, how do you foresee your city being? And I think that sort of will help guide what businesses you have and where you want to invest in. So, for example, their city, it's a tourist city. They have a lot of people visiting. So they have a lot of Airbnbs. And so what they've done for Airbnbs is if you own one, you have to register it. It has to get inspected. It's a $1,000 fee. And they use that money from, I think they have over 800 B&Bs to into the chamber, into different advertising and different events. I was at a Christmas tree lighting a couple years there over there. They have a public ice skating rink. They are visiting town, so in the wintertime they get people out. They use those funds to pay for a skating rink and different events. So this just sort of got me thinking is, where do we see Darien in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years? And so this is an activity that they did. So it's not an answer you're going to get tonight or any of that, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. I think maybe it's an activity that anyone's interested in. I know Brian reached out to the consultants, and they had a pretty cool video about questions to ask. If money were no object, what would you like to see in your city? How do you see it changing? With the times, technology, regulation. What would you envision? And I thought that was really eye-opening for me. Everyone has long-term planning goals, but what's the long-term vision? I think that would help guide us a little bit on some of the zoning stuff and some of the other items. A lot of times you can, go both ways in certain things, but if you have a destination you're trying to go to, I think that might help guide it a little bit. And so Brian reached out to the city administrator, and there's a video in there and some other information, but maybe that's something we could maybe do next year, or get our thoughts. Are we just a bedroom community? That's one of the things came up with me with the warehouse, is that for a bedroom community, do we want more trucking in Darien, right? And then that goes down to the zoning and what gets zoned and how it gets zoned. But I really feel that having a vision of your city gives you sort of a direction 10, 20, 30 years out, and helps with the with other items as well. So.
Any response to that? Alderman Vaughn, you look like you had a comment there.
I'm always full of comments up here in my head. No, I think it's great.
I think Tom will tell you, this wasn't to create a long-term vision. This is to create a vision statement. There were 87 people who participated in this process. I watched the video. Brian called their city administrator or whatever.
Yeah, we talked back and forth. When Tom sent me that article,
Right.
I was interested to see actually the survey and the results and how they did it. So That's why it was in the packet.
And they asked some very interesting questions with regard to, what people saw, and they went through a process. We have a mission statement. I think we have a vision. The other night, it was interesting. The other night, I went to Mayor Grasso's State of the Village presentation in Burr Ridge. And he stated a vision statement for Burr Ridge. He put down that Burr Ridge will be, and think about Darien when I read this to you, high-performing and engaged, financially stable, with future projections that ensure sustaining the needs of residents, infrastructure that is proactive and responsive, development that is focused on community growth, health, and well-being, and public safety geared to creating healthy neighborhoods. Now, look at Darien. Think about Darien. I think we do all of that. I think we're high performing. We have one of the smallest staffs you're going to see in a lot of DuPage communities, and yet we're high performing and we're engaged. We're financially stable. We cut $3.6 million out of our budget when COVID hit. We were able to put that, still meet the services, the maintenance, the infrastructure that our residents required. So I don't think our financial stability has ever been a question. We have not raised our property tax rates in 11 years. Our infrastructure.
Just to correct, you said rates, but it's really the levy, because
The
they are
levy.
different things. So
Right.
whatever we got last year in dollars, we collect, but the rates depend on different things.
The infrastructure that is proactive and responsive, I think we have an excellent infrastructure program. We have communities there are communities around us that need to raise a bond when they're going to redo streets and sewers and water lines. Tell me if I'm wrong, Dan, but when Downers Grove had to raise a $5 million bond to go through the area right behind us here to redo all the water mains and the streets and everything like that. We don't do that. We don't do that because we have an infrastructure plan that plans on 5.5 miles of road repair every year. We have a ditch program. We have a rear yard drainage program. We concentrate a lot on infrastructure. Development that is focused on community growth. We got a development that's going to go up across I-55. That's going to have 60 units or 58 units. That's 58, at least 58 new people that are going to be coming into Darien. Do we have additional properties that we can develop? Alderman Klistek mentioned how Willowbrook's invested in TIF districts to redo their industrial area. Okay. They're basically looking at the old Sterigenics buildings in terms of redesigning those. And I think it's a worthy goal on their part because they could create something that's going to meet the needs of a different population. But we don't have that. We don't have a development like that where you can go out and consider a TIF district. You have to prove it's a blighted area. We don't have that, okay? But we have development within our community, and our development is focused on providing a healthy lifestyle for our residents. And then our public safety. We talked tonight about our public safety program. We probably have one of the lowest crime rates in Darien. We have a trained police department. We have a chief who's data-driven. These are Burr Ridge's. This is Burr Ridge's vision. Now, I wrote it down. Which one of these don't we have? We have all of these. Now, do we need to put down on paper these things? Okay, I put them down on paper. Now we have it. Do you see this? It's called Darien in the Future. I started this 3.5 years ago. When I became mayor, I wrote out goals for the city over a 4-year period that I would be mayor. You know how many times I've rewritten this and added things to it? I probably do it every 6 months, all right? and it's gone from like 1 page to 3 pages, okay? And it not only includes where do we focus our future goals, but it also talks about challenges, talks about quality of life, how we celebrate our diverse community, how we promote development in the city. This is here, folks. If you would all like a copy of it, I can give it to you so you have it. This guides me as mayor. Because as I said in the newsletter that's going out, that'll go out to residents, what, Brian? In a couple of days.
Well, no,
It's at the
it'll
printer.
go to the printer like the first week in December is the plan.
Okay?
Schedule.
As I say in that, I don't get to vote, but my job is to create a vision for you guys. And I do that. But I do it based on stuff like this. And I do it based on stuff like this. I don't think a visioning, if you sat here tonight and said, I like Tom's idea, let's do a visioning process. Well, you've done some of that already. You already asked your residents in this survey what you think of the city of Darien. Are you happy? Do you feel safe at night in the parks? Do you not feel safe at night at the park? What do you think of our communication? You know, how can you judge 10 years from now? Where do you think we'll be financially? How difficult? I would prefer to look at it in 4-year increments or 5-year increments, but it needs to change. It needs to evolve. And so I truly feel, I think he makes a legitimate point, but we're there. We have that already. Any of you can tell me that you don't have a vision, or we haven't been guided by a vision over the last 4 years or 3 years, tell me. Because I don't think any of you would tell me that we don't have a vision, because everything we do is geared to those 5 things I mentioned: public safety, community growth, financial stability, infrastructure. I mean, I think we do that, and we concentrate on that. We sit down, we develop a budget. Our budget is based on those models.
Well, do we need to do a better job communicating? I mean, in 2007, the mission of the city of Darien was put together, and what you just shared tonight that Mayor Grasso said is basically what we already have, but just new, different words were used, different, maybe it was paraphrased. But I mean, if we have a mission, maybe it's time to take a visit at it, incorporate it with the vision you have been working from, the ideas others have. But I mean, I just pulled up the city website really quick. Is there somewhere that's prevalent that people could find that? What is the mission of Darien? I mean, do people even know what it is?
I think that if, like I said, this has evolved. This has changed constantly.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, but vision's more of a new buzzword. I mean, mission statements were always what people referred to, but now it's more of a vision statement. But in the end, it's the same thing, in my opinion.
Well, the mission is the big overall. The vision is a subset of the mission. I don't think there's anything wrong with with putting that out, but I think the only caution I would offer is if I have changed this a dozen times over the last 4 years.
It's evolving.
You constantly have to let your citizens know it's evolving. That, we may have a developer come in and say they're going to buy Chestnut Court and redevelop Chestnut Court and put condos and homes there and develop a mall. That may change our city if we did something like that. So do we want to move in that direction? Yeah, I think we all want to move in that direction. But do we put on paper that that's where we want to be in 5 years? We don't know. So, I mean, there are a lot. I develop strategic plans for schools all the time. I was always on a strategic planning committee. And you usually develop a strategic plan for 5 years. That's what you do. And you point out everything you're going to do during that 5-year period, and you evaluate it on a yearly basis. If you want to go through a strategic planning process, we could do that. It's a lot of work, and then you got to keep to that. You have to evaluate it. If you want to do that, we could do that. But I think you need to give some thought to what we mean when we say we need a vision statement. I have no problem. I think what Tom did, I welcome that. But the question is, where do you want to go with it? Tom, you had a raise your
Oh,
hand.
yeah, I like that you said healthy lifestyle, and one of the goals I put in was bike lanes, but I put that in every year, and I haven't seen that come up.
Cool.
as
I'm sorry, what?
Bike lanes.
Got it.
So we said how healthy lifestyle, and one of the things I agree 100% with the mayor, but I keep bringing up bike lanes. I think I put in goal session this year, but I didn't see it pop up.
See, I think that when a resident, when somebody says, I want to come to live to Darien, how do you sell them on our community? Think about that. How would you tell them, come to Darien? Darien is a great place to live. What would you tell them Darien has? Well, Darien has a great infrastructure program. It's got a great public safety program. It's got beautiful neighborhoods. It's got great churches. It's got the availability to transportation, quick transportation. It's got great schools. We do have great schools. We have two of the finest high schools in the state of Illinois, Hinsdale South and Downers Grove South. And we got grammar school, elementary schools. They're among the top grammar schools. So those are the things I would tell people about Darien. So but what can we do as a city?
I think what Tom just mentioned is critical. I think it's critical to have bike lanes to connect from here to Waterfall Glen. I think that improves our that improves our scores as a city, making Darien more walkable. That improves our score as a city. That attracts younger couples and families to Darien. So I think I think that's great. I think what you're mentioning is great. I think that's important. But I think we should add on to it as well. Like you were saying, you've been working on a document for, since you've been mayor. So I think, it's a living document. There's things that, the next generation may want that you guys don't want, So I think, having bike lanes to connect to Waterfall Glen, there's certain streets that connect there. Clarendon Hills Road is one of those areas. Cass Avenue, Cass is one of those streets that connect directly to Waterfall Glen. So that's one of the highlights of Darien. Waterfall Glen is a huge, huge draw. They draw 1 million people a year to Waterfall Glen. So why not highlight that and connect that with Darien? I like to see when I mention Darien to people, they be like, "Where's Darien?" So I have to. Well, it's right next to Burr Ridge. It's right next to Hinsdale, Downers Grove. I like to see when I mention that, hey, I know where Darien is. It's 20 miles outside of the city. So I think that, having infrastructure, that's what bike lanes, infrastructure, making Darien more walkable with sidewalks.
But Lester, is that a responsibility of the city, or is that a responsibility of DuPage County? Is that responsible?
I don't know.
Well, it's because certain roads don't belong to Darien, like Cass. And I'd love to see, there's bikers that bike the entire, frontage road by me, but frontage road belongs to IDOT. So,
I would
how do
tell
you
you-
do it that way then?
For those you might not have heard, then the county is working on a plan. Dan had background a while ago. I don't know where they're at. It's not an overnight because they do studies. There's a lot of things to do, but I think, Lester, just so everybody's aware, what you just mentioned, the county is working on right now the plans, which probably is an environmental study and some other things. So I think we are getting to what you're talking about, just as in one specific point, because they recognize that as their responsibility in terms of their roads and other areas. But
That'd be cool. I mean, and even having little ditty bikes. If people that don't have bikes, they come to Darien and they just want to ride a ditty bike over there.
Lester, I just bought a $2,200 electric bike. I'd love to have more bike lanes.
Well, Joe, can you share, would you be willing to share your document?
I'll print this out and give you all a copy. That's why I brought it tonight. I wanted everybody to know, I've shared this with Brian from time to time because we've talked over the years about doing a state of the city. And I was going to use this as for the state of the city. And COVID and other things all precluded that from happening. So I pull that out every 6 months and I make improvements to it. I make changes to it. I put things down that we've accomplished. What are the future challenges? I mean, I think it'd be great to give all of you a copy and have all of you look at it and critique it. We've got challenges ahead of us. We really do. Quality of life issues we have in front of us. We do. Diversity. How do we acknowledge diversity within our community? I don't know if we do a good job at acknowledging diversity within our community. We need to probably take a look at that. So I have no issue. I'll give everybody a copy. give me some feedback on it.
So in terms of any direction for the staff, do we have any on this yet? I mean, we'd like to get that coming out of this meeting, so I don't know if you want us to do something or.
I mean, all of you filled out a survey. All of you evaluated the city in different departments. That in and of itself is a visioning process. You said what you thought was critical, what was the one question? What are the three things Darien we should concentrate on over the next year or couple of years? You know, if you did that, why don't we really look at that and then put that into effect?
We could take a look. We could take a look at your visioning, and when we're putting together our thoughts on the zoning, we can incorporate them both. We can just say, you know, here's my zoning questions or ideas, and here's what my thoughts are on your visioning project.
I'll email all of you this tomorrow.
I'd like to say one last thing. I think a mission statement, vision statement, it should be one sentence. I mean, if it's just like making Darien a thriving business metropolis or thriving business community, that's something to connect to. And all that stuff that's listed, that kind of connects to that statement.
A mission statement, I went through a strategic planning process for DuPage mayors and managers, and you know what they told us? A mission statement is only good if everybody can recite the mission statement. I doubt if any one of us could say what Darien's mission
Well,
statement is.
there's a bazillion bullet points under it. It's not just a statement, it's an outline.
It should be one thing.
That's a valid point, Lester. I mean, you know, we have our tag, Darien, a nice place to live, but what does that mean?
We're a nice place to live.
We are a nice place to live, but.
Come on,
Yeah,
Pam.
no, I mean, I think there's still something to be said about, you know, trying to incorporate all these ideas into a statement, a phrase.
9:41. We got one more item.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an item here that Alderman Shower gave us. And basically, it was a statement that,
This is
well,
the
Ted, why don't you
survey.
explain it?
My biggest concern when it comes to the city of Darien going into the future, and I'll say this right off the bat, is we have probably the greatest sense of, you know, taking care of the things that we need, i.e. the police,
Municipal services.
plowing the streets, whatever it may be. The point is that my concern is all of a sudden, if we don't have the right equipment at the right time due to the situation COVID or chip shortage or anything like that, if we end up losing a truck or if we end up losing 2 or 3 police cars that we're short, people are going to start to notice that, hey, guess what? We don't, Darien screwed up. My street didn't get plowed, and that's not normally the way it is. That perception is going to come on out. And my biggest concern, my biggest fear is that as technology gets better, electric vehicles are terrific. But at the same time, it also takes 3-4 hours for them to turn around and get charged on up. If we're dealing with trucks and we have an electric truck and we have to get it charged up in the middle of a snowstorm, it takes us off the streets. Okay? Or if it's a situation where we have a truck that's 12 years old and all of a sudden, hey, it's due to come on up in 2 years, but it may take us 3 years to get the truck. Why don't we start to look at it ahead of time? So the point I'm trying to make is that as we get more and more with the technology and in the future, our biggest concern is if we're going to maintain, the streets and the police protection, that we have the equipment to go at a moment's notice, and that we also make sure that we have the right equipment ahead of time. And that means that we have to buy it ahead of time, a year or 2 years out, or that we have to make sure that we are looking at, a gas-powered engine versus electric to make sure that it lasts in the future. That's what we need to do. And that's my biggest concern that I see. Because as soon as somebody starts saying, oh, guess what? They're screwing this on up, it's a reflection on all of us. And that's one of the things that I saw as, coming out of COVID with all these situations with the trucks and so forth and technology. So that's where it's at.
We actually have number 5 on and I realize we've been here, but I think our job tonight is to go through this. I'd like to draw your attention first to the goal-setting survey results that you did as elected officials, prior to going through the other part of it, because I think this is your evaluation of the city. This is your evaluation of our different departments, and I would like to go through this. I mean, if you go to the first page, it should say 2022 goal-setting survey results. It's at the back of your packet. And the first category is resident communication. And all of you gave a grade. Do you all feel comfortable with some of you made comments. Would it be, any of you like to comment on your comment? This is kind of like you were all the teacher and you graded all your students. Now you got to be open and honest with your students and tell them why you gave them the grade you gave them.
I'll start. Like I said, I still feel more work can be done and will be done. I know there's plans in place with the website. I still have residents say they can't find certain things. Even tonight it came up, our mission statement, where is even that located on the website? So I think we've made great strides, but I think more work can be done to make it as rich and as easy to navigate as other communities have.
Mayor, that's a great point. And just so you're aware, and the council is, we did meet with our website group last week, and we recognized that it was pretty hard to search things, and which just wasn't coming out right. So they've added a couple different ways to search now. So if you're searching for Clark mosquito contract, you could specifically go in the city council or the meeting section, type in Clark mosquito, and you're going to get the meetings that was talked about. But thanks, that's a good point. We needed to look at that.
We also are going to simplify some of our forms, Mary. You know, we've had some vacancies on several commissions, and I told Laura that it was very hard to find that application. And so what she did is she set it up so that you click on this, and you go to a page, and there's a link. You click on that, and you get the form, and you fill out the form, and you hit submit, and I get that form.
So you can do it online on the website.
You do it online,
Great.
and we're thinking of doing our business licenses the same way, and some of our other applications for.
I know raffle license, I had Darien Women's Club, couldn't find it, and
Right.
and it'd be, all forms, in my opinion, should be online.
And she's going to look at that. Lisa was going to compile a list of forms to give to them that we'd like that to be simplified.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to comment on resident communication? All right, moving on to municipal services. Dan, you got some high grades there.
Nothing but the best for us.
Next time we'll add A+ category so we can get it up just a little instead of A.
All right, we had some comments there. Anybody like to comment on their comment? Anything they want to emphasize?
Mayor, question to maybe, Dan, Alderman Klistic asked about the capital projects. And specifically, somebody asked why 79th Street was not done yet, or wasn't poured at the same time as the concrete program. Tom, I think that's what you're.
Yes. So we had a concrete program done, and then I told residents we're going to have sidewalks for the kiddos. But on my face.
No, and basically it's, there's a maintenance contract. That maintenance contract is something that the city does every year for specified curb and gutter, as well as sidewalks. Whereas these two projects, specifications needed to be put in place. Also surveying for right-of-way, where the sidewalk was going to go. So there was a lot more work engineering the sidewalks because there's none there. So we were going to go out to bid. I just recently put that on a halt for the simple reason that you can't get concrete right now, or it's very limited to who gets it. So we're going to hold up opening bids until next year for that specific contract on the installation.
Calendar year, Dan, or fiscal year? Calendar year?
It'll probably still be this calendar year, or I should say this fiscal year,
Okay.
But in early spring. But our goal was to have the sidewalk already going and in there. But it was just, it doesn't make any sense. The pricing keeps on going up. And the concrete is not available right now.
Okay.
Dan, sidewalk maintenance seemed like it took longer this year. Was that just my opinion or observation? Because there was a couple streets where I thought they cut it and it was there for 3, 4,
Oh, you're
5
correct.
weeks.
If you
Okay.
recall, we had that aggregate strike, the
They needed stone.
Yeah,
But, but it was, okay.
towards the end.
Okay.
Yes. and
Later
that's-
on in the summer then.
Yeah, and
Okay.
even at that point, we were still ahead of the game in comparison to other
Right.
municipalities. You know, we do two parts of a program. The first is for the road program, and then the second portion is the fill in for sidewalks that are off the road program per se.
The maintenance.
So,
part.
yeah, we were about a month and a half behind.
Okay.
And again, that was all due to the strike.
Okay. Gotcha.
Tom, I think I've answered your question.
Yeah, and that's just the Ted's point when he mentioned that if something goes wrong, everyone brings up like, hey, what's going on, right? So I just looked at it as a bulldozer going through and pouring concrete and calling it a day.
And we've mentioned at city council meetings that there's a shortage. There was
Director, he did put that.
No,
in.
it just
But we
seemed
made it.
so-
We mentioned it here in
Also
in
here,
council
yeah.
too.
Yeah, but it just seemed on one of these maintenances that we did a cut on some sidewalks, and it was like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later before they poured it.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, seems a little long. That's all.
And that's exactly true.
Okay.
The one comment I'd put in on for municipal services was, we have a code enforcement officer, yet I still get a lot of calls on certain properties being unkept. And I looked at the surveys, and that verified it to a degree. What's been the process with our code enforcement person going around?
Basically, what we've done is we're going to be having a meeting with Karen Byrne, who's our consultant,
Right.
Within the next week. Based on where we've been prior to putting her on, we have increased code enforcement issues doubled in comparison to when the planner was in charge of it. Now, our goal is to have the code enforcement officer out every 3 to 4 weeks per quadrant. When I say quadrant, there's 7 quadrants. So for the first year, we want to take a look at what happens when she's out there once a month or 3 to 4 weeks per quadrant and identifies things.
Are those quadrants the wards, or they have separate?
They're actually on snow. They're snow plow. We refer to them as a snow plow route. It seems to
Okay.
be the most systematic.
Got it.
Is there cases that I've seen, staff has seen, elected officials have brought to our attention? Should have those items been caught? The devil's in the detail.
Okay.
There could be for example, I have an issue that I just noticed recently, a commercial truck. It's only there on weekends and or evenings. So the code enforcement officer is basically running through the subdivisions during the day. We need residents and yourselves to let us know when there's violations, or what they think are violations. Putting leaves in the street, that's a violation. But in that case, we need the help of the police department at the same time. So we're going to have a meeting, like I said, next week, and we're going to see what else are some of the deficiencies that we could be better in. It's not 100% yet, definitely not. There's some issues that need to be, minor issues that need to be resolved, whether it's timing and more enforcement action, meaning contact with residents versus letters or whatever, the door hangers. So there's some work to be done yet, but I'm very satisfied where we are today in comparison to where we were a year ago.
And the one thing, and I don't want to get off, especially at 9:54, is that there are residents who have their businesses where they're, plumbers or electricians or whatever the case may be, and they have their commercial truck in there, in the driveways, and I have a hard time, picking on them or pointing them out, because that's their livelihood. That's what they do. That's what they use to pay our property taxes. You know, whatever.
And there's a difference. And there's a difference between a vehicle that's not rated for residential streets versus a pickup truck or a service van.
Okay.
So again, if in doubt, give us a call. We'll clarify whether or not that vehicle has the right to be there.
So Dan, a small pickup truck from an ABC, heating and air conditioning, residents could park that all day. You can't have employees meeting there. You know, it gets above and beyond.
Correct.
Kind of the smaller type of trucks. I
Yeah.
don't know.
What's the issue? You know, we've had where a plumber or a tradesman basically had 3 trucks showing up at the end of the day, parking overnight. No, that's not allowed. You know, but in that particular case, from what I'm hearing from you, Joe, is it's an individual that's an owner and operator.
Well, there's a couple. I mean, and of course, in my day, I pass an electrician, I pass a plumber, painter. But at least but they're there all the time. And obviously, when Kieran Burns going through, they're gone. So I just want to know where do we draw the line as far as that? Because like I said, I have a hard time, telling somebody who's got their plumbing truck or electric truck with their decals and stuff on it, saying, hey, you can't park that there, and that's their livelihood.
The best thing to do is to call us or say, hey, we got this vehicle. Is this allowed or not allowed? And we can clarify that. A lot of these businesses also have home occupation licenses, and the home occupation license does allow for a vehicle or 1 employee, for example.
Okay.
So there's different, again, we're almost into the zoning
Right.
portion of things again, where it gets interpretation and definition.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to move on to administration and finance. I was intrigued, I thought the grades were good, but I was intrigued by the responses. We mentioned Julie, we mentioned Mike. Did anybody ever consider that Brian develops the budget?
No, really?
He's not looking for kudos here, but
And we got good grades in spite of that.
But, I hope all of you realize that it's not just Mike, not just Julie. This is the man who works to develop the budget. And so when we talk about administration and finance, and I really feel as mayor, because I work with him every day and I see what he does, and I work with him on the budget, that when you're doing this, if you're going to give an A, don't just give an A to Mike and Julie, give an A to the entire team. This is the guy that does that. So, but I mean that seriously.
Laying low.
Yeah.
On the
And he's
budget,
probably embarrassed that I mentioned it, but I wanted to mention it, so.
but doesn't the department staff give them the money they need to Brian? So Dan gives how much he needs, the water department gives how much to
He,
Brian needs,
he
right?
does the
So they
budget.
give it
He goes to Dan,
what
Dan
they
gives him his
So they get the
recommendations.
numbers.
The chief gives, but he sits down, has a meeting with Dan, says no to this, no to this, no, and so on and so forth.
Well, there's, I mean, really the budget is a bunch of numbers that you might see.
Right.
But it's not a bunch of numbers, to me, to Dan, to the chief. But if I gave you a jigsaw puzzle of 50 pieces now, you still have to put it together. And I think that's kind of an example of the budgeting process. You put the puzzle together, you hope it fits, and as soon as you put that one together, the next year's coming around. So everybody does a good job on the budget, but it is putting the puzzle together.
Okay.
It's something that it's gonna start soon. And a lot of you don't see that process, but between now and the time you get your documents and we do our budget hearings, he's working on it, Lisa's working on it, Mike has input into it, so it's a team effort. I just wanted to say that. All right, police services. Some interesting comments here.
What page are you on, Mayor?
Page 132.
Oh, 132, okay.
132 is police services. I don't think I skipped anything.
No, I was out of order on my page.
All right. Tom, you had some unusual comments there. Would you like to explain what you said?
I think he's talking about you.
Oh, for police?
You.
Mhm.
You said you got more complaints than the past 7 years with regard to.
Yeah,
police
yeah, I was
disability.
surprised about that. So Legansky, other people said they haven't seen police. maybe they're back to work and so they're at home all the time. But it's the first time I received this comment in 7 years, and I'm just a little bit more sensitive to Mr. Legansky's area, just because he had all these incidents in the years past before I was even on council. But I was just surprised to get those comments this time versus previously. So obviously, Chief showed me some GPS data showing them before. I know in years previously they've followed some buses behind, so that's 9 in the morning, 8 o'clock's the highest visibility. So following buses was a good thing. I seen an officer in Warwick and 79th Street on this morning going to work, so that visibility was good. But maybe they're busy, just didn't happen this time around. But those are the comments I received from residents. So
I think I pointed out that we have GPS, and it's a pain to do that. But Alderman Kenny talked about his little episode about perception. I grew up on South LaSalle Street in Aurora. I would go back to visit my parents and have dinner with them every day, 5 days a week when I was doing my shift. I grew up at 508 South, about 30-ish, something like that. Got a call. It was early 80s because I was a patrolman then. Went there, and the guy's just berating me about never seeing the police. I said, down that street on the left side, about 4 houses down, that's my parents. I drive down this road every day. My car sits in front of their house every day. I was on, actually I was on 6 to 2, 6P to 2A. It was a power shift that we ran. And it sits down there every day for 20 minutes, half hour to eat dinner and visit with my parents. It's just perception. And I'll tell you an ugly story about confession because it's long enough in my past. So we were sitting in roll call, and they kept complaining about never seeing the police on Trafalgar Court. So I drive through Trafalgar Court a couple times during midnight shift that time. And next roll call, get hammered again. They're not seeing police cars. So the next day, 2 donuts with lights and sirens on. I got called in a sergeant's office, and a little discipline had to happen. Redirect.
Is that like Maverick doing the flyover there,
Exactly.
there, Chief? I think so.
Exactly.
A little grandstanding. Look at you, bad boy.
So I'm not going to have the officers driving down the roads with lights and sirens just to show that they're there. But the officers are out there. Like I said, I ran those GPS things and making sure they're out there, out and about, and they are. Regarding the buses, we actually we've done it a couple different ways. One was to follow them. One was to put the officer on the bus or buses over about the first week of school, and then just have a chase car near that would call out those things. So that gets done pretty much the beginning of each year. This year, we contacted the bus drivers, and I think we only talked to 3 out of however many there is. Not one said that there was a problem with passing stop school buses. So a lot of things going on. And then the other one was a lot of stuff about traffic stops. There's a lot of traffic stops. We used to average about 4,300 stops before I got here. Now we average about 5,500 stops. This year, or last year, we were almost 6,000. This year, we're over 6,246. So a lot of traffic enforcement's being done, a lot of speeding violations being written, stop signs and those type of things. So again, I think that's a big perception issue more than anything.
In my broken record, I've said it before, God rest his soul, Stan Nemec, he drilled me about the police not being around the neighborhood, and I told him, you had a police officer pass your house 3 times Friday night. He goes, how do you know that? I was in a squad car doing a ride along when we went by each time. So people don't, unless someone's out there all night long looking for a squad car, they're not going to see them going by. It's perception.
Now, is the GPS what you did include the unmarked squad cars too?
Yes.
So there could be, I think part of it too, people don't realize what portion of the patrolling vehicles are marked versus unmarked?
There's 12 cars, and I believe 3 of them, or maybe 4, are unmarked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that creates part of the problem too, is that the police are physically there, they just are not in a marked vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And how many community vehicles is that considered unmarked?
No, it's marked.
Service officer vehicle?
Yeah, there's 2 of them, and they're marked.
Yeah, those are little sedans.
Part of
Yeah,
They're no SUVs.
little Ford Tauruses.
They have an M on their license plate, though.
Oh, it's got MP,
Yes, municipal
MP.
vehicle.
municipal police.
Yeah.
MP, M
MP.
over P, yeah.
All right, takes us to miscellaneous items. Has everybody read, I guess my question is, has everybody read through that, and does everybody agree with that? Everything that they see there?
You're talking about the narrative or the grades?
The narrative, Alderman Klisick wrote a lengthy narrative with things in capital letters. And I'll be honest with you, Tom, I have a lot of concern about some of the accusations that you made made there. And, you know, you've got your fellow aldermen here tonight, and I'm just wondering, do they agree with the comments you made?
I think, just to add, Mayor, I read through this, and I'm not sure of the thought process Tom used to write this up, but I guess in summary, he would like a clear understanding of why one alderman's concern move action to address where others get ignored or pushed back by the staff. And then you mentioned elected officials jumping and screaming at meetings. So, I mean, there's a whole paragraph there, and I understand it's getting late, but I don't understand the comment. And you mentioned Alderman Gustafson, Alderwoman Sullivan, but I think it would be nice to hear how you
Yeah,
feel.
absolutely. A very good question. So, when the issue of the chickens came up, Alderman Belcheck brought that forward. The following meeting, you guys had reviewed the ordinance, review other items, and that came forward to staff. Alderwoman Sullivan brought up about smoking and vapes prior to Dr. Smoke, concern of zoning, and I didn't see that addressed or brought forward. So I don't understand why some seem to, in my opinion, get jumped on, addressed right away. And then Dr. Smoke came, and now we're looking at the different potentials with zoning and all these items. But I thought that would have been brought up earlier when Alderwoman Sullivan mentioned that before.
Well, one thing, Tom and I had this talk, it was probably a year ago, when you had asked me the same question about why the chickens issue were brought up. And as I explained to you then, Alderman Belzak brought that up because there were some questions. And a majority of the city council, as we've talked, wanted to address that. And I think that's how business moves forward with the city. If an alderman brings an issue up and there's not a consensus, I don't know what the expectation is, but that's not how the local government works. It works by a majority of the council members. So if I'll give you an example. You brought up buying a piece of property last meeting. I don't have any direction from the council. I don't want you to interpret that as me ignoring or pushing back on projects. And I don't understand screaming at meetings, but it would be nice to hear from any of the other aldermen, anybody, but Eric specifically and maybe Mary, because they were mentioned in here. And it's important for me to hear this and know this.
Yeah, no, like for this Walmart issue, I see Eric doing a lot of the research, and I thought that's something like city council, staff would have done. So he reached out to the Walmart in Pennsylvania and all these other areas.
But that's an example. I did not get direction from the city council to go look at ordinances, or this was something we were going to do, as evident by tonight. So I think we owe it to the aldermen and alderwomen to do what a majority of the council says, not what one alderman might say. We certainly help. Alderman, you call staff all the time, and we answer questions and help you do your job, but direction doesn't come from us. And honestly, Tom, it is a bit insulting to say we ignore or push back. And I don't need to say anything else. I'm not going to defend myself, and it's getting very late, but I would appreciate to hear from other aldermen on this, because I take my job serious, I work hard at it, and I have never once in the 20 years had anybody accuse me of ignoring or pushing back what they do. And that's why I'm asking the council.
Mary?
I'll speak to the vape shop situation. And I did, obviously it was brought up when the vape shop went in Brookhaven. But outside of council, I did have a conversation with Jordan and with Brian Vanna just to get a better understanding. And I did understand zoning maybe a little bit more than some people because I did serve on planning and zoning, but I still wanted to understand what our options were. But I never felt in the process that I was being ignored. I also left the city council meeting not with an expectation that the whole city, that the city council gave marching orders to our city planner or our city administrator to do more, because it's, the city is a business, and we need to make sure we give clear directive to the staff, any staff member, whether it's Dan, whether it's Julie, whether it's Lisa Clem, Dorothy. I mean, anybody needs to know what their jobs are. And so unless we give them clear directive, and I never felt like there was a directive by council to do more about the vape. I personally, am passionate about it, so I took it upon myself to do some investigating. But going back to the chickens, I mean, Alderman Belzak did bring it forward, but we did have a specific situation that had become very public of residents in Alderman Belzak's ward that kind of brought it to the forefront. And it was kind of an ugly situation. So it was put forth to the whole city council, like, what are we going to do about this? And it fell, in Tom's territory, but I felt like, we were like, well, what do we do about chickens? It was something that we all were faced with at that given moment, because it was very, it was popularized.
And it was an education, because Mary and I, we wound up going to a couple different houses, one of your neighbors, Tom, and we didn't realize how many chicken coops were in the city of Darien until this went down. So I think it was it's never great to see neighbors fighting over something, but in the long run, it was good because it brought our attention to it.
Right. I don't need to talk about chickens, but it was I came 360 on the whole idea because I knew nothing about it. I didn't understand why people would have chickens. No one in my neighborhood has chickens. Spent a lot of time with people in other neighborhoods and became to learn a lot about it. And I feel like I'm a better person for it because I understand why people have chickens, and I spent time with people.
You and I went to school together. There you go.
Yes. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I felt like I was not ignored. I felt like I got my answers met. I put it on my priorities for goal setting as an important thing to talk about, amongst other things. And I'm satisfied with that for right now. And I know more will be done with zoning. Will things change? Not necessarily, but more discussion will happen.
I'll give you another example. Alderman Vaughn brought up the idea of a stoplight at Clarendon Hills Road and 67th Street. And that fermented for a while. He brought it up, but there was discussion of that, and the chief provided data. We talked about what we had done previously, what worked, what wasn't working, and eventually got to the point where we made the decision as a council to put it in the budget and put a stoplight there. So it wasn't you brought it up. I think even Alderman Klistek seconded the idea that a stoplight should go there. It was also his concern. But that's something, you weren't ignored. We worked it through, and that stoplight's going to go up there where? In the spring of?
Spring, yes.
2023. I could probably think of half a dozen things that Joe Kenny brought up, or Tom Bell's, or Eric brought up, that we all discussed and thought was critical enough that we acted on it. He can't do anything unless he gets direction from us. It doesn't work that way. He doesn't initiate it, we initiate it. We go to him. Mary brought up the idea, the concern of residents in my ward, my area, getting in and out of our subdivision with the farm. We talked about it. There seemed to be a concern there, and now Dan came up with a solution for that. Tom, I guess I just don't see where people's ideas, when there's a worthwhile discussion by the council, don't get done or don't get acted on. Maybe we don't agree to pursue it, but at least we discuss it. And I think we've always discussed things that have been a concern to a majority of the council. And I think everybody presents good ideas, but if you present an idea and no one supports it, how is he supposed to move forward? He can't move forward on that.
So with the parking in the area example you brought up, right? I didn't say anything, but it still got brought forward, right? So who was like the second, third vote to move that?
There's things we do on a day-to-day basis that don't require a vote. Mary Sullivan just asked about the website and the search. Those are things that we have budgeted, we have planned out. Tom, you brought up buying property mid-year, and as an example, when we talked about this a year ago, you mentioned the 79th Street sidewalk, and I explained to you the city council specifically had not included that when you had asked previously, and it was at a goal setting. And there are differences between something brought up at a meeting that is a capital project or an ordinance change versus helping traffic in a subdivision. That's our job on a day-to-day basis.
Gotcha, okay.
All right, the last thing is transition of new refuse service, LRS. And it seems like LRS is doing or did a great job in terms of implementation. I would have you take a look at your top priorities. I know I will, because I'm going to look at those in terms of anything that I'm going to add to this document over here. Alderman Kenny's still pushing a new municipal service facility.
Well, I mean, which backs up with what Alderman Shower is saying about protecting our equipment. So for the future, that we're not sitting back with the services that we can't provide because we don't have the equipment because it's been left on the outside. It's tough, but it's that's why it's on this list.
I had something else, yeah, but I'm going to let it go.
Can I add something?
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I just want to speak to, because I know some things are like, as far as my Ward 5 is concerned, I have seen tremendous turnover with young families. And I'd like to see, maybe we can even seek out information. The schools do consensuses on how many, families will be coming in the future. But I mean, I'm now the old person in my neighborhood, believe it or not. I don't think of myself as the old person, but everyone around me, all the homes that have changed over are all young families, young kids, and I'm very encouraged by that. And I've asked them, because I was going around talking to, introducing myself to some new people, and some of them grew up in Darien, moved to the city, and then moved back out. But I mean, some people are brand spanking new to Darien, just like I was 28 years ago. And I said, what brought you to this community? And hands down, schools. And and the safety and obviously the convenience too. But this is where we want to raise our family and educate our children. And so I'm encouraged by that, because we didn't have a splashy marketing campaign about it. I think we have a sound reputation, which is very important. But I am encouraged, and I think that'll start to trickle into other areas of our community where you're going to see a lot more younger families. Especially as, maybe people it's a little bit more affordability, or, hopefully the interest rate doesn't go too crazy. But, I do think that's going to be more prevalent in other areas of our community, younger families.
I think people have to understand that dynamics of home buying have changed. Millennials aren't buying homes. Millennials are renting homes. They're not, or renting condos, or they're renting townhouses. So I don't know if you're going to see a lot of changeover in terms of population, but I would agree with you, Mary. Just on my street, 3 homes were sold, and the families that moved in all have small children. And towards the other end, down by where the Throms live and where the Novarinis live, there are several young families that have moved into that area as well. Is it true that we've gotten a little bit older? The census says we've gotten a little bit older.
Well, but people are happy here, so they want to stay here.
They want to stay. And, a community, in terms of investment, we have a group on Saturday, a community action team that meets, and the whole purpose of that group is to solve problems and create programs. We did the community calendar. We've expanded now the Christmas tree lighting program from just me flicking a switch to a 3-hour program with Christmas carolers and Santa Claus and a Chris Kindle market. We're planning a fine arts fair next year. We're planning an Oktoberfest next year. There's no investment of money. City's not spending money to do that. This is a volunteer group that meets on Saturdays once a month, and this is their decision to do all this. Okay? Now, will the April person take up some of this? Yeah. But this is all coming out from a volunteer group. I don't think there's anything wrong with the community investing money like Willowbrook is on revitalizing their industrial area, because maybe they could turn one of those buildings into a gymnasium or a play center or something like that. But we're making investments, non-monetary investments with our community action team that I think will result in programs that'll change the demographics of our city. And I'm 72 years old. I don't mind being older and living in Darien. I think a lot of people like Darien. They've been here 30, I mean, I get phone calls. I've been here 30 years. I've been here 27 years. How many calls do you get, Joe, like that, where people say, I've been here 30 years or 25 years? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's stability with that, okay? Yeah, we lost a Catholic school, but we didn't lose a Catholic school because of population change. We lost a Catholic school because of the way the program was managed by the diocese as well as the parish, okay? All those kids who went to St. Mary of Gostins are breaking down the doors of St. Mary of Gostins. They would have all been at Our Lady of Peace. So I think the changes we'll make will come without having to expend large sums of money. Now, will we use money as an incentive to get Chestnut Court redone? Possibly. We might do that. But and will that change our demographics? I don't know. But I think that I'd be very cautious to say that because we're an older community, we're not drawing younger people. I think we are drawing younger people. People want good schools, folks. And we have good schools.
No, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I had another topic, one second topic.
Go
I don't know
ahead.
if you were done that.
I'm done.
No, I just wanted to, again, back to Alderman Klistick's comments, because I had just one more question. Mary had commented. And Eric, did you feel ignored?
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I have a tendency to come up with some off-the-wall stuff, okay, as you all know.
No.
You're passionate.
Come on.
You're passionate.
I'm
Let's
very
use the word passionate.
about it. But, you quickly, you kind of put me on the right path, Brian, of who to include, such as the police chief, getting his involvement in to really look at the overall picture of it in a little bit more detailed level.
I thought we worked really well on that.
And I think we did on that once, you got my perspective of where I was coming from and my concerns, and getting the input from the police chief was really critical, because at the end of the day, it's his team that's got to manage the process.
That's why I was a bit surprised to see your name in here, but I am done and it's late.
We have the community survey. I know it's late, it's 10:30 almost. I would ask you to go through this, take a look at this. Our numbers are pretty good. The other night when I was at Mayor Grasso's presentation, he put bar graphs up like that and said, 90% think we're a great community. We have people, for the most part, that really like living in Darien. And this says that. But I would go through and read this and read some of the comments that they make, because I think those comments are critical. I think those comments, we learn things from that. So please do that. I don't want to keep you here another half hour doing that.
Give me 30 seconds. I saw one comment in there, and I'm very passionate about this comment. The comment that the person said we're having more crime and the home values are dropping in Darien. I almost went through the roof with that. Single-family houses in Darien in 2019 were $360,000. Today, the average sales price is $432,000. I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, but that doesn't tell me to show me that the houses are dropping. Yeah.
My taxes are going.
That means your taxes are
Just saying.
Not from the city. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Amen.
So moved. Alderman Gustafson or Alderman Chower.
We didn't start with it, so
We're adjourned.